intelligence operatives were involved in this operation. Now, you obviously can bear in mind that accusations of collusion that will come out now, it's emerged that Osama Bin Laden was in Islamabad, if that turns out to be the case. But by the Pakistanis releasing this information and confirming the death, they're obviously wanting to show that they're an ally to the United States in the war on terror, and I think clearly also try and, I think, preempt any accusations of collusion. Wolf?
Indeed, if Pakistani intelligence, if the government of Pakistan were directly involved in helping the United States kill bin Laden, that would certainly, at least in the short term, dramatically improve U.S.-Pakistani relations, because if, in fact, Pakistan was not involved in this, and yet he was hiding in a mansion outside the Pakistani capital of Islamabad, that, on the other hand, would dramatically further disrupt relations between the U.S. and Pakistan. We don't know all the specific details, what role Pakistan's intelligence, Pakistan's military may have played in helping the United States find bin Laden, find where he was located at this mansion outside of Islamabad. But if, in fact, Pakistani intelligence was directly involved in helping the U.S., that would certainly strengthen the U.S.-Pakistani relationship in the short term. And let's not forget this significant point. It's not just since 9/11 that the U.S. and others have been going after bin Laden. It's many years earlier, in the early 90s, the first attack on the World Trade Center back in 1993, there has been a concerted effort to find bin Laden, to arrest bin Laden, to kill him if necessary. And we do know that after 9/11, then President George W. Bush signed specific executive orders authorizing the United States to go ahead and assassinate bin Laden if possible. He always said, if all of our viewers remember correctly, and they do, that bin Laden was wanted dead or alive. He approved orders to go ahead to the CIA and other members of the U.S. government. If they find bin Laden, it's okay to kill him if necessary, and that apparently has been what has happened just now. Chris Lawrence is our Pentagon correspondent. Chris, what are you picking up?
Hey, Wolf, just got done speaking with a defense official who said right now there has been no change to the security procedures at the bases there in Afghanistan. It was a point that you brought up earlier with John King about the fact that obviously there could be a counterpunch by Al-Qaeda and its allies and its sympathizers to what has happened here now and what is about to be announced, in that they may try to strike back in retaliation for the death of Osama bin Laden. So again, no change right now in the security procedures in the bases in Afghanistan. And I think now, in just some of the conversations I had with defense officials, a lot of the attention has already started to turn and will be turning even more now to the man called Anwar al-Awlaki. You know, he is a U.S.-born radical cleric. He speaks English. He uses the internet. He uses social media to try to reach out and convert new followers. He's sort of the new breed. 10 years later, post-Bin Laden, he's using a lot of the current technology to recruit followers and inspire attacks. More of the attention than ever may now focus on him, Wolf.
Yeah, he's the head of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, based in Yemen, an American-born cleric who obviously has a following out there. I'm also very curious, as I'm sure you are, Chris, about the #2 Al-Qaeda leader, Ayman al-Zawahiri, the Egyptian physician who's been with bin Laden all of these years. There was always widespread speculation, is Ayman al-Zawahiri hiding out together with bin Laden, or are they separated, moved in different directions? We don't know the fate of Ayman al-Zawahiri right now, but presumably we'll get some more information on that from the President of the United States. He was supposed to address the nation almost an hour ago, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. It's now getting closer and closer to 11:30 p.m. Eastern. He's going to be going into the East Room of the White House fairly soon and speaking to all of us and telling us what's going on. He'll make it all official. He'll give us the perspective as only a president of the United States can give that perspective. He'll also look ahead. What does this mean for the United States right now? What does this mean for U.S. citizens? What does it mean for U.S. allies, U.S. friends throughout the world? Al-Qaeda has been a terrorist organization, not only attacking U.S. targets, but targets all over the world, whether in Europe, Africa, Asia, in the Middle East. Certainly, we've seen the death that's been wreaked by Al-Qaeda over the years. John King is watching all of this. John, As I say, it's almost an hour since the president was supposed to speak, but as you and I know, having both covered the White House, the final draft of a critically important statement like this that will go down in history, probably one of the most important statements this president will make as president of the United States. They want to fine-tune it to make sure it is precisely what they want to say, no room for error whatsoever.
And Wolf, so often we use the term historic, and let's admit tonight we use it too often. Tonight, let's use it with a capital H. The President of the United States is going to walk into the East Room of the White House and announce to the American people and announce to the world that the United States has confirmed the killing and the death, and he is convinced of Osama Bin Laden, who has become the face of global terrorism, who has become the face, enemy number one, if you will, of the United States of America, known most of all as the nefarious figure who orchestrated the 9/11 attacks, the singular, most deadly attack against the United States of America. Everybody who was alive on that day remembers where they were when the Twin Towers fell, when the Pentagon was attacked, when there was a fear that the White House or that the United States Capitol would be under attack, when the plane hit the field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And as we reflect on that moment, and as every American remembers their anger, their outrage at that moment, it's also worth remembering that is not the only scars Osama bin Laden has inflicted on the people of the United States and others around the world. It was November 1998. He was indicted in 1998 on 224 counts of murder for embassy bombings in Kenya and Tanzania. It was in 1999 he appeared for the first time on the FBI's most wanted list, 1999, well before September 11th, 2011. And on 2000, of course, in 2000, he was linked to the attack and bombing of the USS Cole in Yemen that killed 17 sailors and injured 39. So Osama bin Laden has singularly been the face of Al-Qaeda, the face of the terrorism movement against the United States of America, Wolf. And you remember full well, George W. Bush said, dead or alive. George W. Bush said that getting bin Laden, bringing him to justice, was a singular focus of his administration, that the next president, his successor, and throw parties aside, doesn't matter Democrat, doesn't matter Republican, that a president of the United States could walk in to the East Room of the White House tonight and tell the American people and tell a global audience that Osama bin Laden is dead, that the United States has confirmed it has his body, is a signature moment for the country, for this president, and for the world. And yes, there are many, many questions as to what comes next. Can Al-Qaeda regroup? Will it regroup? What will happen in the next 72, 100, 300 hours? Will there be attempts to lash out at U.S. or Western installations around the world by Al-Qaeda supporters and sympathizers? That is a huge concern for the United States and for the global intelligence agencies tonight. It is one reason the president is taking his time delivering this speech. They want to make sure that everybody around the world is on alert. But remember, Wolf, the significance of this moment as the president prepares to tell this not only to the people of the United States, but to a global audience, Osama bin Laden is dead.
And it's now, John, approaching 11:30 p.m. here on the East Coast, the president getting ready to go into the East Room of the White House and make this dramatic statement, an historic statement to the nation, indeed to the world. And there you see a live picture coming from the East Room. The president will be announced. He will walk there up to the podium and make his statement. It was supposed to be made an hour or so ago, but they're fine-tuning it. They're making sure that all the phone calls are made not only to key members of Congress, but to key world leaders, informing them in advance what precisely has happened. Our Gene Reserve, our Homeland Security correspondent, by the way, has just received a formal statement from Susan Collins, the ranking member of the Senate Homeland Security Committee. Susan Collins saying this, let me read it to our viewers. The director of the National Counterterrorism Center informed me tonight that Osama bin Laden was killed in a U.S. operation. This welcome news is a credit to our intelligence efforts and brings to justice the architect of the attacks on our country that killed nearly 3,000 people on September 11th, 2011. On the other part of the screen, you're seeing crowds that are gathering outside the north lawn of the White House on Pennsylvania Avenue. They are bringing American flags. We heard them singing the Star-Spangled Banner just a little while ago. Let's listen in to see if we can hear the chanting, the screaming, the excitement that's going on. this is being not only this is not only taking place here in Washington outside the White House, but I'm told from Twitter followers and others around the world, people are gathering to celebrate the death of Osama Bin Laden, the architect of 9/11, who was killed at a mansion, we're told, outside of the Pakistani capital of Islamabad, and we're told also this was done with the cooperation, the assistance of Pakistani officials. We're not exactly sure whether they were military officials, intelligence officials, but Pakistan, some elements of the Pakistani government were helpful in killing bin Laden. We don't know, as I say, we don't know. We don't know if Ayman al-Zawahiri, the #2 Al-Qaeda leader, was killed in this operation, if he was at that mansion at the same time. We'll get some more details. That's coming up. Now, not far from where you saw those crowds gathering at the White House, outside the north lawn of the White House, inside in the East Room, they're gearing up for the President of the United States. The network television pool cameras have been in place now for more than an hour, ready to go, and to broadcast the President's statement to all the American people, indeed, to the world. It's now past 11:30 p.m. on the East Coast, late Sunday night. And we know this occurred many hours ago, but they wanted to make sure this was in fact bin Laden. They wanted to do all the vetting, DNA evidence if necessary, to make sure that the person who they thought was bin Laden was in fact bin Laden. And you see the crowds outside the White House and elsewhere. They're very, very excited. Ed Henry's our senior White House correspondent. Ed, this is tape that we had just a little while ago over at the White House. Actually, these are live pictures. We now have a live camera outside the White House. You can see the north portico of the White House right behind them. Ed, what else are you learning?
Well, so dramatic. When we first reported this, CNN was first reported this about a half hour ago, there were maybe 40 tourists out there. Right now, there are dozens of people from all directions. I can see them through the White House gates, literally running. People are running to the White House gates. You hear the chants of USA, USA. That crowd that started at about 40 people has now grown to hundreds. Pretty soon, I bet it's going to be thousands as they see these pictures. More and more people want to join. And also the social media is spreading the word. And I can tell you, Secret Service officers a few moments ago were literally running up the driveway behind me because they are now trying to make sure that they have this crowd in control. It's obviously a positive crowd, a happy crowd, but they were not expecting this late on a Sunday night. So they are now making sure that that fence at the White House is secure. No one hops over the fence, anything like that. Interesting as well, our producer, Shauna Shepard, was just over there, and she said people were telling her this is the best day ever in American history. There are lots of American flags, people cheering President Obama. One man was holding up a T-shirt that said, "Thank you, President Bush." In fact, I'm told by a Republican official who served in the Bush administration, they had a very elaborate plan about what to do on a night like this. They never got to do it. It's now going to be done under President Obama, Wolf.
And the president is going to be announced within a moment, within a few seconds, we're told now. He will go up to the podium at the White House. Take a look at this picture. Here's the East Room of the White House. The president is going to be announced. He will come in. He has a carefully prepared statement. The statement has been worked on now, we're told, for the last several hours. They've known about this for a long time over at the White House, but they've been waiting patiently to make sure that everything was ready to go. They've alerted members of Congress, they've alerted world leaders, and now the president will tell us officially bin Laden is dead.
Good evening. Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children. It was nearly 10 years ago that a bright September day was darkened by the worst attack on the American people in our history. The images of 9/11 are seared into our national memory. Hijacked planes cutting through a cloudless September sky, the Twin Towers collapsing to the ground, black smoke billowing up from the Pentagon, the wreckage of Flight 93 in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where the actions of heroic citizens saved even more heartbreak and destruction. And yet we know that the worst images are those that were unseen to the world. The empty seat at the dinner table, children who were forced to grow up without their mother or their father, parents who would never know the feeling of their child's embrace, nearly 3,000 citizens taken from us, leaving a gaping hole in our hearts. On September 11th, 2001, in our time of grief, the American people came together. We offered our neighbors a hand, and we offered the wounded our blood. We reaffirmed our ties to each other and our love of community and country. On that day, no matter where we came from, what God we prayed to, or what race or ethnicity we were united as one American family. We were also united in our resolve to protect our nation and to bring those who committed this vicious attack to justice. We quickly learned that the 9/11 attacks were carried out by Al-Qaeda, an organization headed by Osama Bin Laden, which had openly declared war on the United States and was committed to killing innocents in our country and around the globe. And so we went to war against Al-Qaeda to protect our citizens, our friends, and our allies. Over the last 10 years, thanks to the tireless and heroic work of our military and our counterterrorism professionals, we've made great strides in that effort. We've disrupted terrorist attacks and strengthened our homeland defense. In Afghanistan, we removed the Taliban government, which had given bin Laden and Al-Qaeda safe haven and support. And around the globe, we worked with our friends and allies to capture or kill scores of Al-Qaeda terrorists, including several who were a part of the 9/11 plot. Yet, Osama bin Laden avoided capture and escaped across the Afghan border into Pakistan. Meanwhile, Al-Qaeda continued to operate from along that border and operate through its affiliates across the world. And so shortly after taking office, I directed Leon Panetta, the director of the CIA, to make the killing or capture of bin Laden the top priority of our war against Al-Qaeda, even as we continued our broader efforts to disrupt, dismantle, and defeat his network. Then, last August, after years of painstaking work by our intelligence community, I was briefed on a possible lead to bin Laden. It was far from certain, and it took many months to run this thread to ground. I met repeatedly with my national security team as we developed more information about the possibility that we had located bin Laden hiding within a compound deep inside Pakistan. And finally, last week, I determined that we had enough intelligence to take action and authorized an operation to get Osama bin Laden and bring him to justice. Today, at my direction, the United States launched a targeted operation against that compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. A small team of Americans carried out the operation with extraordinary courage and capability. No Americans were harmed. They took care to avoid civilian casualties. After a firefight, they killed Osama bin Laden and took custody of his body. For over 2 decades, bin Laden has been Al-Qaeda's leader and symbol, and has continued to plot attacks against our country and our friends and allies. The death of bin Laden marks the most significant achievement to date in our nation's effort to defeat Al-Qaeda. Yet his death does not mark the end of our effort. There's no doubt that Al-Qaeda will continue to pursue attacks against us. We must, and we will, remain vigilant at home and abroad. As we do, we must also reaffirm that the United States is not and never will be at war with Islam. I've made clear, just as President Bush did shortly after 9/11, that our war is not against Islam. Bin Laden was not a Muslim leader. He was a mass murderer of Muslims. Indeed, Al-Qaeda has slaughtered scores of Muslims in many countries, including our own. So his demise should be welcomed by all who believe in peace and human dignity. Over the years, I've repeatedly made clear that we would take action within Pakistan if we knew where bin Laden was. That is what we've done. But it's important to note that our counterterrorism cooperation with Pakistan helped lead us to bin Laden and the compound where he was hiding. Indeed, bin Laden had declared war against Pakistan as well and ordered attacks against the Pakistani people. Tonight, I called President Zardari, and my team has also spoken with their Pakistani counterparts. They agree that this is a good and historic day for both of our nations. And going forward, it is essential that Pakistan continue to join us in the fight against Al-Qaeda and its affiliates. The American people did not choose this fight. It came to our shores and started with the senseless slaughter of our citizens. After nearly 10 years of service, struggle, and sacrifice, we know well the costs of war. These efforts weigh on me every time I, as Commander-in-Chief, have to sign a letter to a family that has lost a loved one, or look into the eyes of a service member who's been gravely wounded. So Americans understand the costs of war. Yet, as a country, we will never tolerate our security being threatened, nor stand idly by when our people have been killed. We will be relentless in defense of our citizens and our friends and allies. We will be true to the values that make us who we are. And on nights like this one, we can say to those families who have lost loved ones to Al-Qaeda's terror, justice has been done. Tonight, we give thanks to the countless intelligence and counterterrorism professionals who've worked tirelessly to achieve this outcome. The American people do not see their work nor know their names, but tonight they feel the satisfaction of their work and the result of their pursuit of justice. We give thanks for the men who carried out this operation, for they exemplify the professionalism, patriotism, and unparalleled courage of those who serve our country. And they are part of a generation that has borne the heaviest share of the burden since that September day. Finally, let me say to the families who lost loved ones on 9/11 that we have never forgotten your loss, nor wavered in our commitment to see that we do whatever it takes to prevent another attack on our shores. And tonight, let us think back to the sense of unity that prevailed on 9/11. I know that it has at times frayed, yet today's achievement is a testament to the greatness of our country and the determination of the American people. The cause of securing our country is not complete, but tonight we are once again reminded that America can do whatever we set our mind to. That is the story of our history. Whether it's the pursuit of prosperity for our people or the struggle for equality for all our citizens, our commitment to stand up for our values abroad, and our sacrifices to make the world a safer place. Let us remember that we can do these things not just because of wealth or power, but because of who we are. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May God bless you. And may God bless the United States of America.
President of the United States making the dramatic, historic announcement. It's all official now. Bin Laden is dead. The president describing in some detail, not all of the detail, but in some detail how the U.S. intelligence community got wind that bin Laden was hiding somewhere in Pakistan and that a team was assembled to go there and kill him, capture him or kill him. In this particular case, they killed him. The president saying they had cooperation from the Pakistani government. He thanked President Zardari of Pakistan for the assistance in this effort. They had the body, they retrieved the body, and they confirmed, in fact, it was bin Laden. I assume they had DNA evidence in addition to other obvious visual sightings of bin Laden. They wanted to make sure they had the right individual. Ed Henry is over at the White House, our senior White House correspondent. The president, he was to the point, and he understood fully what this announcement means, the cheering. I can even hear it now around the world, certainly where you are at the White House.
Wolf, this crowd behind me outside the White House gates, it was building literally as the president spoke. The president laid out some new details. First of all, he confirmed what we reported here first, which is that Osama bin Laden was killed in Pakistan, not in Afghanistan. He said deep inside Pakistan, and gave us some new details, that it was last week that he authorized the U.S. operation, and that it was today that a U.S. team, he called it a small U.S. team, launched the operation today in Pakistan. He said that there was a firefight, that Osama bin Laden was killed. The U.S. took custody of his body, and in the words of the president, dramatically said, quote, "Justice has been done." I think it was also very interesting that the president sort of called on the nation to come together. He said, quote, "Let us think back to the unity after 9/11. He said, "I know it's been frayed sometimes, but now is a moment to come together." And I can tell you, Wolf, there are a lot of people. It started with 30 or 40 people. There were 30 to 40 people. Now it's hundreds of them. Since we first reported it here from the lawn, hundreds out there now who are coming together to celebrate this moment in American history. It's been lighting up on social media, many of them students from George Washington University, as you know, just a few blocks away. There's also, I can see, a lot of tourists out there. It's dark out here. It's getting very late. But, Wolf, this crowd is so excited. There are American flags being waved. They're chanting USA, USA. Others have been chanting, hey, hey, goodbye to bin Laden. Very angry at him, obviously, these many years later. But mostly very positive in chanting USA, USA, and chanting, singing as well, the national anthem, Wolf.
We're getting statements, Ed, from former presidents, former President George W. Bush. Let me read it to our viewers as we look at these pictures outside the north gate, the northwest gate of the White House on Pennsylvania Avenue. Earlier this evening, President Obama called to inform me that American forces killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of the Al-Qaeda network that attacked America on September 11, 2001. I congratulated him and the men and women of our military and intelligence community who devoted their lives to this mission. They have our everlasting gratitude, President Bush continuing. This momentous achievement marks a victory for America, for people who seek peace around the world, and for all those who lost loved ones on September 11th, 2001. The fight against terror goes on. But tonight, America has sent an unmistakable message. No matter how long it takes, justice will be done. More statements coming in from former President Bill Clinton and others. Let me bring in John King, who's watching all of this unfold. John, as we continue to watch the crowds gathering outside the White House and indeed elsewhere around the country and indeed around the world, let's reflect a little bit on President Obama's words, precisely the extent of this operation that killed bin Laden.
Wolf, you see the crowd celebrating across from the White House in that park on 9/11. It was filled with White House staffers who were told to flee from the White House. That plane that landed in the field in Shanksville, many thought was directed at the White House or the United States Capitol. I was there when the Secret Service told everybody to run and get out of the building. You see a celebration tonight. The president spoke the words, "Justice has been done." For all the president said tonight, those 4 words, "Justice has been done," I think will echo around the country and around the world tonight. As Ed Henry noted, very significant, the president said there was an operation inside of Pakistan conducted by a U.S. team that involved a firefight. There will no doubt be questions about the coordination, the sensitivities. How did they pull this off within Pakistan? How closely was it coordinated? Were the Pakistanis fully involved, or did the United States decide to do this and essentially bring the Pakistanis in after? That will play out in the days and weeks ahead because of the sensitivities of that relationship, of which you are so well aware, and often the frustration and the tensions in that relationship. But tonight, the President of the United States saying, almost 10 years after 9/11, justice has been done. Osama bin Laden is dead. That is why you see that happening right there in Lafayette Park across the street from the White House. It is happening, no doubt, in homes and in public places across America tonight because Osama bin Laden was the singular face of global terrorism against the United States. There are a lot of questions. What comes next for Al-Qaeda? What is left? Will it try to retaliate? Whether it's Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, whether it's Al-Qaeda affiliates in Somalia or somewhere else in the world, will they try to retaliate? But tonight, Wolf, that celebration in Lafayette Park speaks volumes.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be celebrations in New York City, in Pennsylvania, around the country, and indeed around the world. The word is only beginning to get out right now. The president spoke for just under 10 minutes or so, and he explained why this is so significant. And it comes almost on the 10th anniversary of 9/11. David Gergen worked for 4 American presidents. He's watching all of this unfold. David, give me your thoughts.
Wolf, this is a momentous evening, a rare moment when all Americans can celebrate. I thought the president captured that well tonight, this moment of unity. Not since Adolf Hitler can I remember a single person who has been so hated by Americans as Osama Bin Laden, the architect of an attack out of the blue on us. And Wolf, also, I think part of this elation tonight comes because we've had 10 long, frustrating years since we were attacked. You know, we've been drawn into 2 wars. Our way of life has changed here at home. We have to go through all this craziness at our airports, and we haven't had a victory until now. Well, this is the first clear-cut victory, a night we can all celebrate and thank those troops, thank those intelligence officers, and yes, thank President Obama and thank President Bush. I think the leadership of this country delivered on this one, and there is reason. So often when we see crowds gather outside those White House gates, it's not in victory. It's usually in sadness or some scandal or something. Tonight, it's a victory for the United States, and this is a good moment to celebrate all of us.
Yeah, it's true that intelligence failures are always highly publicized. Intelligence successes not necessarily always publicized, because intelligence officials don't necessarily run out to alert the world that they did this or that. But in this particular case, a huge intelligence success for the Central Intelligence Agency, for Leon Panetta, the outgoing director of the CIA, and others who were involved in this operation. Fran Townsend's our Homeland Security contributor, worked for President Bush as the Homeland Security advisor. You're getting more information on some of the details. We're going to be fully briefed in the course of the next few hours on all the specific details of what happened, Fran, but what are you learning?
Well, Wolf, when the president says that there was a firefight and that U.S. operatives were involved in this firefight and none were hurt, what he's telling you is that Special Operations Forces obviously crossed the border from Afghanistan to Pakistan to conduct this operation. Very dangerous, Wolf. Would have required a tremendous amount of planning, including if any of those American operatives have been hurt, to get them out. And so it will be a very interesting story when they're able to tell us the additional details of just how this thing went down.
And, you know, it sort of reminds me of the operation that was not successful to get the American hostages out of Iran. You remember those helicopters going down. That didn't work out. That was a blunder. That was a failure. This is a huge, huge success, and I assume we'll get those details. Fran, a coordinated operation like this with the government of Pakistan, with President Zardari of Pakistan, that is very, very significant because, as you know, and many of our viewers know, there was a lot of U.S. suspicion that the Pakistanis, or at least elements in the ISI, the Pakistani intelligence service, were not necessarily helping the U.S. in the hunt for bin Laden.
That's right, Wolf, and it'll be very interesting to understand, when did President Zardari actually know this? Did he know? Was it coordinated with him before the operation happened? I'll tell you, Wolf, given the history of this relationship and the distrust that you talk about, it may in fact be that President Zardari and the Pakistani government were not informed until the operation was either underway or immediately after it was finished.
Fran, hold on for a second, because Kenny Specht is joining us right now, a New York City firefighter. This must be, Kenny, for you, for your fellow firefighters, an enormously powerful moment. Tell us how you're feeling.
Good evening, Wolf. As a New York City firefighter, first and foremost, I think I speak for all New York City firefighters when I give a heartfelt thanks to the members of the United States military who took on this very, very dangerous task. I think the most important news we've heard tonight, much more important than even the death of Osama Bin Laden, is the fact that we lost no troops, no American soldiers in this very, very, very dangerous situation that they put themselves in harm's way to go and do the business of this country. I think that we're a blessed country tonight, Wolf. As a New York City firefighter who survived both September 11th and illness diagnosed for my time at September 11th, I'm proud to be an American tonight. I'm proud of our men and women in the service. I'm proud of the special operations, and I know that I speak for every member of the New York City Fire Department when I say that I hope to God he rots in hell.
I know that's how you feel. Kenny Specht is a New York City firefighter. Tell us where you were, Kenny, on 9/11.
Wolf, I got to the site of the Trade Center after both World Trade Center towers had collapsed, but before 7 World Trade Center had collapsed. So I actually witnessed the collapse of 7 World Trade Center, and I remained at the site until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on September 12th. And I spent up until the end of November down at the site, and I was diagnosed with cancer in 2007, and I was retired, disability retired in 2008, and our fight has never ended, Wolf, and I know the fight of this country has never ended, and I hope that every person in this country. I hope that tonight we start to put the past 10 years behind us. I hope tonight we start to again feel exactly what we felt 10 years ago. The bond of being an American. I hope that it comes back again. I hope that it's not forgotten. I know that our military is first and foremost in our mind. Tonight, they are first and foremost in our mind. If I could, I'd hold each and every one of them. I'm so proud of the work that they've done, and they have really brought close to a horrible chapter in this country's history.
Did you ever give up hope, Kenny, that the U.S. would kill bin Laden?
No, but I'd be lying to you, Wolf. I'd be lying to you if I thought about it every day. No, I didn't. I didn't give up hope. I mean, that's all we had. That's all we had. It's like anything else, though. It's just sometimes we think that when it's not spoken about anymore, we wonder really what's still being done. I mean, we're in a quagmire, for lack of a better term, in Afghanistan. I hope to God that tonight is one large step to maybe wrapping up operations in Afghanistan.
Kenny, I'm going to interrupt because I think I've lost contact with you, but I want you to stand by, Kenny, if you can. Stand by for a moment because Peter Bergen is joining us now, our national security contributor. Peter, you've actually sat down and interviewed Osama bin Laden back in the 1980s, if I'm correct. Tell us what you think. The President of the United States saying they found bin Laden, they had actionable intelligence, they sent a team in, they found him, there was a firefight, and they killed him. They got the body, they confirmed beyond a shadow of a doubt this was bin Laden.
Well, obviously, this is one of the great intelligence successes the United States has ever engaged in. I met bin Laden, Wolf, as you know, in 1997. He celebrated his 54th birthday on February 15th. He was not an old man. The hunt had gone very cold. People I talked to in the U.S. intelligence agencies for years used phrases like, you know, the trail has gone cold. We have hypotheses, but not actionable intelligence on bin Laden's location. Clearly, that changed rather rapidly in the last several weeks. It's interesting to me that he was found in Abbottabad, which, after all, is a not insignificant Pakistani city.
How far from Islamabad is that?
It's not far at all.
Where are we talking, like a suburb almost?
No, not a suburb, but it's in the, you know, it's relatively nearby. This is not in the Pakistani tribal regions.
It's not in a remote jungle, mountainous area. It's an area that's relatively close to the capital of Pakistan. Let's get a map up there and show our viewers what we're talking about, because the president specifically said bin Laden was found in this city. But go ahead. Have you been to this Abbottabad?
I haven't been to Abbottabad. Let's look at the map here. So
you see Islamabad there in the middle, and there's Abbottabad right there.
Right. Yeah, so, you know, the informed hypotheses for a long time was that he was in the Pakistani tribal regions, which is this area is not in, that he was in and around there. But interestingly, Wolf, if you go back and you look at the capture or kill of a lot of other senior members of Al-Qaeda over time, many of them were Rawalpindi was where Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the operational commander.
Karachi, for that matter.
Karachi was where Ramzi
These are major urban areas. They were hiding not in some remote area, but in a city. Well,
they were until about 2004. Then they moved into the tribal regions, thinking that the cities were not safe. And then, of course, but you know, in terms of bin Laden, there hasn't been, you know, really good information about him for so long.
And bin Laden is an unusual, you know, he's a tall guy, much taller than most people in that part. So it's not as if he's someone who can just sort of blend into the countryside.
Well, he's one of the most recognizable people in history. Not only that, he's 6'4", very thin. You know, he's recognizable relatively easily. It'll be interesting to see to what extent if somebody dropped a dime on him to pick up a cash reward. That's happened in the past. If somebody If it was more about...
There was a, what, $25 million reward for his capture or death.
That worked for Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the operational commander of 9/11. But in this case, it may have been anomalies about sort of too much movement in and out of this house.
Are you surprised that the president praised President Zardari of Pakistan for Pakistan's assistance, cooperation in the killing of bin Laden?
I'm not surprised, because this is the message that we should be giving and that we are giving, praising the civilian government of Pakistan, which is in charge nominally of the country, rather than praising the military. As you know, there's been 4 military dictatorships in Pakistan in the last 6.5 decades. That's not been good for the country overall. And so, you know, the administration very correctly, it's, at the end of the day, President Zardari is the head of state of the country, not the Pakistani military.
And President Zardari may have been close to the U.S., but others in Pakistan not. I want to show our viewers some video when you and Peter Arnett, you were in Afghanistan and interviewed bin Laden. Talk a little bit about this individual who is now confirmed by the President of the United States dead. There's a picture of you sitting next to bin Laden. This was in Afghanistan, right?
Yeah, this was in eastern Afghanistan near Jalalabad in 1997. You know, bin Laden carried himself like a cleric. I expected a sort of table-thumping revolutionary. He was very low-key. If you didn't know what he was talking about, he almost was like reading from the telephone book. He was so monotonous. But, of course, he was declaring war on the United States for the first time to a Western media organization. That was us at CNN. It was, of course, he wasn't very well known. Even, you know, even within intelligence circles, his name was not well known in 1997. The embassy bombing attacks in East Africa hadn't happened yet. That was a year away. But he gave this interview to us, I think, Wolf, because they were planning those attacks, the first really major anti-American attacks that they conducted. They knew those attacks were in the pipeline. Bin Laden wanted to lay out publicly why he was, you know, going to attack the United States, what his beef was with the United States, which essentially was American foreign policy in the Middle East, which he laid out in some detail in the course of this interview, Wolf.
It's amazing to me that for whatever reason, we don't know how long bin Laden was hiding out in this mansion in this city of Abbottabad, not far from the Pakistani capital of Islamabad. It's amazing to me that for whatever reason, he made the decision this was the best place for him to be. Now, some will ask, did he need medical attention? Was he sick? Was he have kidney problems, dialysis? You've heard all of those reports.
I'm very skeptical about the kidney problems. If he had, major kidney problem, dialysis, there's a lot of, medical equipment that comes with that. Visits to the hospital, he would be dead by now. According to his son, he did suffer from kidney stones, which is a rather different problem than having a major, kind of catastrophic...
One thing to need dialysis, another thing to have kidney stones.
Right. So, the guy's had... when we met with him, he didn't seem to be in particularly good health. He's had some sort of chronic conditions, low blood pressure, but, nothing of the extent that, he didn't die of natural causes. We now know, of course, that he died in a firefight, which is the way I think that he wanted to go. The big question now is, to what extent is he going to be a martyr in all this? That, of course, was his desire.
There will be Al-Qaeda supporters who will seek revenge. There's no doubt about that. Look at these pictures, Peter. This is outside the North Portico of the White House, the gates on Pennsylvania Avenue. People are just cramming the area. I want to listen in briefly and get a little flavor.
QC, are you guys on?
All right. So you get a little flavor of what's going on outside the White House, and I'm sure this scene is being copied elsewhere around the country. We're checking in with our affiliates. We'll get some live pictures from elsewhere. Specifically, I'm most interested in seeing the reaction in New York City. Almost 10 years since 9/11, and on this day, the President of the United States comes into the East Room of the White House and informs the country and indeed the world that Osama bin Laden is dead. Paul Cruikshank's our terrorism analyst. I want him to weigh in as well. A lot of people were giving up that bin Laden would be captured or killed. This president made it clear this was priority #1 for the U.S. intelligence community, and the CIA and the outgoing director, Leon Panetta, deserve a lot of credit.
Well, that's absolutely right, Wolf. This is an enormous breakthrough against Al-Qaeda. Bin Laden, even after 9/11, was the strategic guiding force of the Al-Qaeda organization and the Al-Qaeda movement around the world. And he is literally irreplaceable to Al-Qaeda. No one has his charisma within the Al-Qaeda organization. So this is a very important moment in the war against Al-Qaeda, Wolf, with Bin Laden now being killed. He will, of course, be a martyr figure, but he was much more important to Al-Qaeda alive than dead. He was inspiring recruits to join the organization. He was inspiring people as well who never even joined Al-Qaeda to launch attacks around the world. People literally would go to Pakistan or Afghanistan because they wanted to meet Bin Laden, be part of his organization, and he is no longer there, Wolf.
You know, it's fascinating, the degree of cooperation, and I wonder if you have a quick thought on how this will play in Pakistan, where Al-Qaeda and Bin Laden did have an element of support.
Well, this will be, I think, quite embarrassing to some degree to the Pakistanis. They've claimed over the years that he's not in Pakistan, he's somewhere else, perhaps in Afghanistan. And there's been various Western officials that have suggested that elements of the ISI, the intelligence service there, may know where Bin Laden is. He seems to have been about 80 miles north of Islamabad. This will be very embarrassing to the Pakistanis on one level. Obviously, the Obama administration is praising Zardari, saying they worked together on this, but he was in Pakistan, and that's where he was killed, Wolf, and that's a very significant fact.
Stand by for a moment. I want everyone to stand by because it's almost an hour or so since we heard from the President of the United States. Let me play this. This is the President making the dramatic announcement.
Today, at my direction, the United States launched a targeted operation against that compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. A small team of Americans carried out the operation with extraordinary courage and capability. No Americans were harmed. They took care to avoid civilian casualties. After a firefight, they killed Osama bin Laden and took custody of his body.
That's the President making the dramatic announcement. Nick Payton-Walsh is our correspondent in Kabul, Afghanistan. This happened in Pakistan. Afghani officials are emailing me like crazy saying, we told you he wasn't in Afghanistan. We had checked all the places in Afghanistan. They're relieved that bin Laden was killed in Pakistan. What are you learning, Nick?
I've just spoken to a Pakistani senior intelligence official who confirmed the assassination in Abbottabad, which, as we just said, is not too far away from the Pakistani capital. But absolutely key here, he said Pakistani intelligence operatives were on the ground during the time of the assassination. Now, he said, quote, I can't tell you who pulled the trigger, but this is very much Pakistani intelligence here, trying to show they were part of this particular operation. Obviously, I can't confirm whether that actually did happen, but obviously they're trying to paint a picture here, really, of Pakistan being the US's key ally in this particular operation, that relations so deeply strained over the past few months because of so many incidents that have happened inside the country, the drone strikes, the incident of Raymond Davis, who shot 2 men dead in Lahore. I think it's also probably important to point out that I think really is understanding of people who live in Islamabad amongst the journalistic community there. There is sufficient American capability within that country to have carried out that operation from within inside Pakistan. And there's been speculation perhaps a team crossed over the border, but I think it's important to point out that if the Americans had wanted to take that operation on themselves from within inside Pakistan, it was entirely possible. In my opinion, they could have done that, Wolf.
On the porch.
Yeah, because the assertion had always been that the U.S. was using unmanned Predator drones to go after various targets inside Pakistan. No U.S. ground forces, unlike in Afghanistan, were actually deployed to Pakistan. It's a very sensitive issue for the Pakistanis. They don't want American troops on the ground. But in this particular case, Special Forces units went in there, went to Abbottabad, outside of Islamabad, went to this mansion, found bin Laden, had actionable intelligence, as they say, and they went ahead and they killed the Al-Qaeda leader around the world, if you will. A huge development for the U.S. And as I was saying, a huge development for Pakistan right now. And Nick, it's important to note that there had been recently some serious strains in the U.S.-Pakistani relationship because U.S. officials were concerned that Pakistan supposedly was urging the Afghan leader Hamid Karzai to move away from the U.S. But in this particular case, those elements of the Pakistani government, led by President Zardari, were very, very helpful to the U.S., and you heard the president praising President Zardari and the Pakistanis for this effort. Remember, Nick, over the past several years, the U.S. has provided Pakistan with about $10 billion in various forms of assistance. Nick, stand by. Ed Henry is over at the White House. He's getting more details now on how this unfolded, how the president was informed that bin Laden is dead.
That's right, Wolf. This coming from a senior administration official saying that in recent weeks, the President of the United States has had no less than 5 National Security Council meetings on Osama bin Laden and the intelligence they were getting. March 14, March 29, April 12, April 19th, and then April 28th. That would have been Thursday. And then the order to move forward was on Friday the 29th. So this information just coming in about how much intelligence was coming in with.
Ed, stand by. We're going to get your microphone fixed. It's a little off noise, and I know there's a lot of noise behind you, so we'll get that fixed. We'll get the audio to make sure our viewers hear every word you're saying. Maybe a handheld mic, given the noise at the White House, might be more useful for you right now. You get that mic right up to your lips, and we'll hear everything you're saying. Ed Henry's over at the White House getting new information for a president of the United States to be able to go into the East Room of the White House and announce to the world that bin Laden is dead is one of those moments this president of the United States will certainly always be remembered for, no matter what happens in his remaining term, if it's 1 term or 2 terms. Everyone will always remember this moment when the president confirmed to the world that Osama bin Laden is dead. A lot of folks had been giving up the hope. They thought bin Laden would die of natural causes on his own, hidden in some sort of rural, a very remote tribal area, northwest Pakistan or whatever. Not necessarily the case. Peter Bergen is here. Peter, how significant is it that Pakistan, President Zardari helped the United States, allowed U.S. ground troops, Special Operations Forces, CIA operatives, whoever they were, whether they were Navy SEALs, whether they were Green Beret, whoever they were, to go in there, take weapons, and kill them?
Well, for a start, almost certainly Delta Force and Navy SEALs, not Green Berets. The elite of the elite in terms of black ops that the U.S.
Black operations, we should
would do, and maybe some CIA paramilitaries as well. Highly significant that Pakistan allowed this to happen on their territory, so near their own capital. It says a lot about, we've been talking a lot about how bad the relationship's been in the past several months. I think this shows that underneath this, there is actually a pretty firm relationship. How significant is this for Al-Qaeda? I mean, I think this is huge. Wolf, if von Stauffenberg had managed to kill Hitler on July 20th, 1944, World War II would have ended much more earlier than it did. Killing bin Laden is the end of the war on terror. We can just sort of announce that right now. Without him, Al-Qaeda, there's no one who can replace him in Al-Qaeda. When you join Al-Qaeda, you don't join Al-Qaeda, you pledge a personal oath of allegiance.
So Anwar el-Awlaki, the leader of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula and Yemen, he's small potatoes.
He's a dwarf. He doesn't have he's not involved in jihad. He hasn't, bin Laden was somebody who fought the Soviets back in the 1980s himself. Al-Awlaki is just a propagandist. He's not somebody, he's a dangerous man, but he's not a major hero to the global jihadi movement who's fought against the Soviet Union and the United States now for 2.5 decades.
Ed Henry, let's go back to Ed. Ed, go ahead, tell our viewers, if they may have missed what you were saying before, tell our viewers what you're learning.
Well, Wolf, I think the audio was on the crowd. Let me tell you exactly what's going on. Senior U.S. officials now telling us that in recent weeks, President Obama has had 5 basically secret National Security Council meetings behind the scenes, very quiet, to get more intelligence on Osama bin Laden. March 14th, March 29th, April 12th, April 19th, April 28th. That would have been last Thursday. And then on Friday morning, as the world was watching the royal wedding in the United Kingdom, the president gave the order to move forward and try and kill bin Laden. That was successful, as the president told the nation and the world today in a firefight outside Islamabad, Pakistan. We give you this detail to talk about and illuminate a little bit how the U.S. was trying to piece this together. The president himself telling the world that it took months for the U.S. to piece all the intelligence that they were getting, suggesting that he was in this mansion, as CNN first reported, a mansion outside Islamabad, Pakistan, and it enabled the U.S. to zero in. But the president was deeply personally involved. 5 National Security Council meetings in March and April to pin this down, Wolf.
It's an amazing, amazing moment, and I don't think we want to lose sight of it. The president, by the way, we're told, other aides made phone calls to top leaders in Congress. The president personally called President George W. Bush and former President George W. Bush and former President Bill Clinton to inform them of the news that bin Laden is dead. Ed, give us a little flavor. Is the West Wing of the White House still operating? Are they all working there? I assume all the top leaders, the top officials at the White House, they're there and they're still assessing this moment.
Really remarkable, Wolf. Yes, a lot of senior officials still around here deep into the night. On Sundays, they're still cobbling all this information together, trying to piece it together for our information, for the world's information. And I can tell you, a couple of those officials came out here a few moments ago because they're seeing our live shots. They're seeing these pictures outside the White House gates. A couple of them were just behind me, behind my shoulder as I go back here, watching the crowds. Trying to get a closer look. When CNN first reported that the crowds were gathering, I told you there were 30 or 40 people outside the gates. There's now hundreds, probably thousands, Wolf. There are police cars that have come in on both sides of Pennsylvania Avenue just to make sure there's some order here. There have been Secret Service officers getting closer to the gates, just checking all of it out. It's been very peaceful. It's been celebratory, but it's been very dramatic to hear the chants of USA, USA behind me as this news was delivered to the world. People just spontaneously coming to the White House. Many of them, we believe, as we look at the social media, coming from George Washington University, just a few blocks away, but also many tourists who are here for spring break, etc., coming from their hotel rooms, just saying, we want to see this moment in history. So dramatic, Wolf.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of requests from viewers around the world. If they missed the president's comments, they want to hear us. We'll replay at some point. Don't worry. If you missed what the president said in the East Room of the White House, we'll play it in its entirety. That'll be coming up. We'll share it with our viewers here in the United States and around the world. Gloria Borger is getting more information on the intelligence that led to this dramatic breakthrough, the killing of bin Laden. What are you learning, Gloria?
Well, Wolf, you know, administration officials, as Ed was saying, are starting to brief reporters on this. This compound in Abbottabad was apparently built in 2005. The physical security of it was extraordinary. It has 12 to 18-foot walls with barbed wire around it. Access had been restricted by 2 security gates. One official said that they had been paying attention to the couriers going in and out of this building. One of the couriers apparently attracted their attention. Another thing was that residents burn their trash as opposed to neighbors who just put their trash out for collection. One would think that that might raise a few eyebrows. So, and the property is apparently valued at $1 million, but it had no internet or telephone service. So, so this was something that they were clearly looking at, and that this operation had been monitoring for quite some time before the president gave the go-ahead on this on Friday. So, and that more people were living at the compound than the 2 brothers and the families who were presumed to be living there. And there was one whose size and makeup matches Osama bin Laden.
And that's that was resulted in this very dramatic decision that the president made, a courageous decision to go in and send U.S. troops. Chris Lawrence is our Pentagon correspondent. Chris, you're getting some more information on the nature of the operation to kill bin Laden. What are you learning?
That's right, Wolf. We're now learning that this was a helicopter raid and that it involved a small team of U.S. Navy SEALs. We're also hearing that the entire operation only lasted about 40 minutes and that this team practiced how to conduct this operation before actually going in. There were several so-called practice runs in order to minimize the casualties in the area. After all the speculation for so many years, Wolf, that Osama bin Laden might be hiding in sort of the wilderness area of Pakistan, in the hills, in the border area between Afghanistan and Pakistan, he was actually found in this area of Abbottabad. I spent December and January in Pakistan. Abbottabad is a very affluent area. This was an area in which a lot of retired military officials from the Pakistani military live there. And I'm also told that this compound where he was found was about 8 times larger than some of the other homes in the area. We're also learning that it had about 12 to 18-foot walls and what's been termed extraordinary security around the area, Wolf.
Abbottabad, who would have thought that the Al-Qaeda leader was hiding out in a mansion in a city very close, about 80 miles or kilometers from the Pakistani capital of Islamabad. Fran Townsend, you're hearing more about this operation. What else are you picking up?
Well, Wolf, there would have been an extraordinary process that they go through to verify targeting. You know, the president wouldn't have taken this lightly. He wouldn't have imposed on the Pakistani government. When I say imposed, he wouldn't have pushed them as hard as he did unless he felt very confident in the intelligence. They would have had to have an exfiltration plan, an emergency plan for if anything had gone wrong. It's also, you know, it's interesting, the cooperation with Pakistan. Peter Bergen said this earlier. We've been through a time of tension. This operation, the success of this operation is a moment to try and put that back together. But the Pakistanis ought to be kind of embarrassed. This is outside of a major Pakistani city where bin Laden was living in relative luxury, frankly. And so this will be difficult for the Pakistani government in terms of their own relationship with their own parliament and their own people to explain.
And I just want to alert our viewers, those viewers in the United States and around the world who missed the entire presidential statement from President Obama announcing that bin Laden is dead. We're going to replay that in about 7 minutes or so at the bottom of the hour. So get ready. You'll hear the president's announcement that bin Laden is dead. Fran Townsend is watching all of this. All of our reporters are watching it. This is historic news unfolding right now, and we're getting more and more details. We're learning exactly how the U.S. planned this operation, the troops that were involved, the risks involved. Peter Bergen is here watching all of this together with us. Peter, when we learned now that U.S. helicopters crossed the border from Afghanistan, went into Pakistan, went to Abbottabad outside of Islamabad, the Pakistani capital, you know how nervous top U.S. leaders, given the history of helicopters and Iran, Americans held hostage in Iran back in the late 1970s. Those helicopters went down, as you and a lot of our viewers will recall. This was a risky operation.
It was a risky operation, Wolf, but you may recall that precisely because of the failure in Iran, the failure of Desert One, the helicopters that crashed, that was the beginning of Delta Force, precisely the kind of folks that did this operation this evening in Pakistan. The other thing, of course, is the Pakistanis have been very sensitive about our U.S. helicopters coming into their territory. But we have told them, and it has been very clear, that all bets are off if Osama bin Laden, or one of the top principals in Al-Qaeda, is possible to be located. Now, why was he in Abbottabad, Wolf, is an interesting question. He wasn't in the tribal regions because that's where the drones are. You know, it was clear that for a long time the American drone campaign has been very intense. So we also haven't heard from him, interestingly, for over 3 months. He never commented on the huge events in the Middle East, which was very puzzling to me because he's always commented on things very, very rapidly. And he hadn't commented. It may well have been because he saw that the net was closing in. And it's interesting to me, the reporting we have from Gloria Borger about the anomalies that were around this house. It's precisely those anomalies were the things that the intelligence community was looking for. A fancy house without internet service and without phone service. These kinds of anomalies would be a giveaway.
Yeah, and then obviously they had good actionable intelligence, as they say, and they went and they exploited that intelligence, and mission accomplished. In this particular case, mission definitely accomplished. The mission was to capture or kill bin Laden. They killed bin Laden. Let's listen a little bit longer right now. I just want to get a flavor. This is happening outside the northwest gate of the White House. All right, so there you see the crowd on Pennsylvania Avenue right outside the White House. It's a pedestrian area, no cars allowed except special traffic for the president or for the White House. But these are folks who have just gathered out there, a lot of students from nearby George Washington University, some of the other universities here in the D.C. area. They're coming with American flags. They were singing the Star-Spangled Banner. They are excited, and this situation, I'm sure, this crowd situation, developing all over the country right now. Ed Henry is only a few feet away on the north lawn of the White House. So what else are you learning, Ed?
Wolf, a senior official is giving us more information about how all of this played out so dramatic today just outside Islamabad, Pakistan. These senior U.S. officials saying that since bin Laden's compound where he was so close to such a big city, it was an extremely dangerous operation for this U.S. team to go in, not be detected, etc., and that they were around and inside bin Laden's compound for 40 minutes, kind of a long time to be there and get out safely. More dramatic as well is the fact that there were, we believe, multiple helicopters involved, but one of them crashed. These U.S. helicopters crashed, one of them due to mechanical failure. No one was injured, none of the U.S. officials, no U.S. military injured, but then we're told that the U.S. military destroyed the helicopter so that, Al-Qaeda would not be able to go into that helicopter, glean any intelligence, any information. They destroyed it, similar to what we saw play out a few weeks ago in Libya when a U.S. plane crashed there. Again, you can hear this crowd getting louder behind me, making it harder and harder for me to lay out all these details. One other important one, though, to note is that we're told by senior U.S. officials that in addition to Osama bin Laden, at least 3 other people were killed, 3 adult males, 2 couriers, and a son of Osama bin Laden. And then we're also told by these senior U.S. officials that 1 woman was killed in the compound because she was used by one of the men around Osama bin Laden as a human shield. And so that woman was killed, Wolf.
Stand by for a moment because we're going to be replaying the entire presidential statement just in a minute or so. I want to bring in our David Gergen, who's been watching all of this unfold. David, give us a little context right now in the scheme of history and a presidential statement. What does this compare to?
Wolf, it's difficult to remember a statement that was so celebratory in recent American history. We've had so many downers. You know, this is a moment when the president, I think, without sort of dance, I think it almost goes back to the fall of the Berlin Wall before you find anything this dramatic, that this had this sense of positive history about it. We've had a lot of down moments, but not very many positive ones. And I must say, reading through the comments by citizens across the country on the internet, there are an awful lot of them that say, finally, job well done, and they're all celebrating. There is an awful lot of people who have already turned to politics and said this is going to be a huge help to President Obama in the election. They say Obama got Osama. That's a tone you hear out there. But there are also a great many people saying, if the war on terror is over, let's bring our troops home. If we got the guy, let's come home tomorrow. That could be complicating for the president. One final thought, Wolf, and that is, as we've heard Ed Henry report, and we've had more details from others, I think this is not only a big night and a milestone for the CIA and for the military, but it's also a hugely positive night for the president's national security team. The fact that they could have meetings going back 6 weeks now and not have a word leak is a very strong signal that this is a good working team. You know, often historically we talk about the 13 days of John F. Kennedy and wondered, could it ever have held for 13 days today? This team proved it could help, that news like this, important, sensitive news, could hold for 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing considered, you know, normally how so much leaks in Washington. This was so carefully kept secret. It's now 12:30 a.m. on the East Coast here in the United States. I want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world. We heard a little while ago the President of the United States telling all of us that Osama bin Laden has been killed. A U.S. operation went into a town about 100 kilometers, 70 miles, 60 miles or so from the Pakistani capital of Islamabad, and they went in. There was a mansion there. They had actionable intelligence, cooperation from the Pakistani government, and they went ahead and they found bin Laden. They went ahead and killed him and others. They then retrieved the body, confirmed, in fact, it was bin Laden. Didn't only look like a 6'4" Osama bin Laden, but they had other forensic evidence to confirm this was, in fact, bin Laden, and bin Laden is dead. Now, people are celebrating outside the White House. They're celebrating all over the United States, indeed, all over the world, although U.S. officials are taking steps right now at diplomatic compounds, at embassies, U.S. installations, military facilities, to make sure that they're on higher alert in case there is some sort of Al-Qaeda-related retaliatory response. This is a good moment for those of our viewers in the United States who may have missed what President Obama said, to listen to his statement in its entirety.
Good evening. Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children. It was nearly 10 years ago that a bright September day was darkened by the worst attack on the American people in our history. The images of 9/11 are seared into our national memory. Hijacked planes cutting through a cloudless September sky, the Twin Towers collapsing to the ground, black smoke billowing up from the Pentagon, the wreckage of Flight 93 in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where the actions of heroic citizens saved even more heartbreak and destruction. And yet we know that the worst images are those that were unseen to the world. The empty seat at the dinner table, children who were forced to grow up without their mother or their father, parents who would never know the feeling of their child's embrace, nearly 3,000 citizens taken from us, leaving a gaping hole in our hearts. On September 11th, 2001, in our time of grief, the American people came together. We offered our neighbors a hand, and we offered the wounded our blood. We reaffirmed our ties to each other and our love of community and country. On that day, no matter where we came from, what God we prayed to, or what race or ethnicity we were united as one American family. We were also united in our resolve to protect our nation and to bring those who committed this vicious attack to justice. We quickly learned that the 9/11 attacks were carried out by Al-Qaeda, an organization headed by Osama bin Laden, which had openly declared war on the United States and was committed to killing innocents in our country and around the globe. And so we went to war against Al-Qaeda to protect our citizens, our friends, and our allies. Over the last 10 years, thanks to the tireless and heroic work of our military and our counterterrorism professionals, we've made great strides in that effort. We've disrupted terrorist attacks and strengthened our homeland defense. In Afghanistan, we removed the Taliban government, which had given bin Laden and Al-Qaeda safe haven and support. And around the globe, we worked with our friends and allies to capture or kill scores of Al-Qaeda terrorists, including several who were a part of the 9/11 plot. Yet, Osama bin Laden avoided capture and escaped across the Afghan border into Pakistan. Meanwhile, Al-Qaeda continued to operate from along that border, and operate through its affiliates across the world. And so shortly after taking office, I directed Leon Panetta, the director of the CIA, to make the killing or capture of bin Laden the top priority of our war against Al-Qaeda, even as we continued our broader efforts to disrupt, dismantle, and defeat his network. Then, last August, after years of painstaking work by our intelligence community, I was briefed on a possible lead to bin Laden. It was far from certain, and it took many months to run this thread to ground. I met repeatedly with my national security team as we developed more information about the possibility that we had located bin Laden hiding within a compound deep inside Pakistan. And finally, last week, I determined that we had enough intelligence to take action and authorized an operation to get Osama bin Laden and bring him to justice. Today, at my direction, the United States launched a targeted operation against that compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. A small team of Americans carried out the operation with extraordinary courage and capability. No Americans were harmed. They took care to avoid civilian casualties. After a firefight, they killed Osama bin Laden and took custody of his body. For over 2 decades, bin Laden has been Al-Qaeda's leader and symbol, and has continued to plot attacks against our country and our friends and allies. The death of bin Laden marks the most significant achievement to date in our nation's effort to defeat Al-Qaeda. Yet his death does not mark the end of our effort. There's no doubt that Al-Qaeda will continue to pursue attacks against us. We must, and we will, remain vigilant at home and abroad. As we do, we must also reaffirm that the United States is not and never will be at war with Islam. I've made clear, just as President Bush did shortly after 9/11, that our war is not against Islam. Bin Laden was not a Muslim leader. He was a mass murderer of Muslims. Indeed, Al-Qaeda has slaughtered scores of Muslims in many countries, including our own. So his demise should be welcomed by all who believe in peace and human dignity. Over the years, I've repeatedly made clear that we would take action within Pakistan if we knew where bin Laden was. That is what we've done. But it's important to note that our counterterrorism cooperation with Pakistan helped lead us to bin Laden and the compound where he was hiding. Indeed, bin Laden had declared war against Pakistan as well and ordered attacks against the Pakistani people. Tonight, I called President Zardari, and my team has also spoken with their Pakistani counterparts. They agree that this is a good and historic day for both of our nations. And going forward, it is essential that Pakistan continue to join us in the fight against Al-Qaeda and its affiliates. The American people did not choose this fight. It came to our shores and started with the senseless slaughter of our citizens. After nearly 10 years of service, struggle, and sacrifice, we know well the costs of war. These efforts weigh on me every time I, as Commander-in-Chief, have to sign a letter to a family that has lost a loved one, or look into the eyes of a service member who's been gravely wounded. So Americans understand the costs of war. Yet, as a country, we will never tolerate our security being threatened, nor stand idly by when our people have been killed. We will be relentless in defense of our citizens and our friends and allies. We will be true to the values that make us who we are. And on nights like this one, we can say to those families who have lost loved ones to Al-Qaeda's terror, justice has been done. Tonight, we give thanks to the countless intelligence and counterterrorism professionals who've worked tirelessly to achieve this outcome. The American people do not see their work, nor know their names. But tonight, they feel the satisfaction of their work and the result of their pursuit of justice. We give thanks for the men who carried out this operation, for they exemplify the professionalism, patriotism, and unparalleled courage of those who serve our country. And they are part of a generation that has borne the heaviest share of the burden since that September day. Finally, let me say to the families who lost loved ones on 9/11 that we have never forgotten your loss. nor wavered in our commitment to see that we do whatever it takes to prevent another attack on our shores. And tonight, let us think back to the sense of unity that prevailed on 9/11. I know that it has at times frayed, yet today's achievement is a testament to the greatness of our country and the determination of the American people. The cause of securing our country is not complete, but tonight we are once again reminded that America can do whatever we set our mind to. That is the story of our history. Whether it's the pursuit of prosperity for our people or the struggle for equality for all our citizens, our commitment to stand up for our values abroad, and our sacrifices to make the world a safer place. Let us remember that we can do these things not just because of wealth or power, but because of who we are. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May God bless you. And may God bless the United States of America.
The President of the United States, that was a little bit more than an hour ago. He addressed the nation and the world and confirming what we had learned only moments earlier, that the U.S., in an operation with the support of the government of Pakistan, had found Osama bin Laden at a mansion not far away, about 60 miles, 100 kilometers or so outside of Islamabad, went in there with a special operations force after a firefight, killed bin Laden. Now, they're celebrating outside of the White House. I want to show you some live pictures right now on Pennsylvania Avenue outside the north portico of the White House. People have gathered, a lot of students from George Washington University, other campuses in the D.C. area. They've brought American flags. They're cheering, they're singing, they're celebrating. They're also celebrating in New York City at a very, very moving place. This is Ground Zero. You're looking at pictures from Ground Zero in New York City, where was the World Trade Center. Some 3,000 people were killed almost 10 years ago. Just imagine, as we approach the 10th anniversary of 9/11, what the feeling would have been in this country and around the world if bin Laden was still, if he were still at large. Now he is dead. The 10th anniversary of 9/11 will take over a different perspective. Our CNN correspondent Jason Carroll's over there at Ground Zero in New York. Jason, set the scene for us. A lot of folks probably thought they would never be able to celebrate the death of bin Laden, but they're celebrating right now.
Celebration is the exact way to put it, Wolf. I mean, since we've been down here, hundreds and hundreds of people have been coming down to Ground Zero. I want to see if you can see what's happening here. People just sort of coming down here. They're bringing flags. They're singing, "God Bless America." People start singing. Then all of a sudden, they start breaking out. They start cheering. I want to bring in some of the people who've come down here for various reasons. You've come down here. What made you come down? I'm sure you heard the news. Tell me what you're feeling at this moment.
Just great pride in my country and happiness and sorrow and revisiting emotions from 9/11 generally. We live in the neighborhood in Tribeca, and we just thought we're too close. We have to go down and see what's going on.
Hey, I think a lot of people are like you. Obviously, all of these people have come around here. Let's bring you in here as well. Obviously, you came down, heard about the news. Tell me what you're feeling. Why did you decide to come down to Ground Zero?
Well, it's just the most out-of-body experience to feel so involved in history. This is just such a historic moment for our country right now. It's just, I mean, it's so surreal. It's,
you know, so much suffering, so much pain took place at this very spot. And I think a lot of people coming down here for the same reasons that you did. Sir, let me grab you in here as well. Obviously, you came down to, you know, take part in what's happening down here right now. People bringing down American flags. Yeah. Tell me how you're feeling at this moment.
I mean, it's just a huge gathering of energy, and I think for many it's kind of a big sigh of relief, you know, that, you know, just seeing everybody here, it's really crazy. It's, like she said, it's an out-of-body experience, you know, it's nothing like I've ever felt before.
And you can hear some of that cheering going on, right, Wolf, right now in the background. People, again, bringing down American flags. Ground Zero right here, happening right here. All of these folks just coming down, wanting to take part in something that's just sort of happening as we speak. More and more people, you can hear the chants now of USA, USA, happening down here at Ground Zero, happening more and more. And Wolf, just as we've been here, we've seen the crowd grow. more and more. The mayor has released a statement, New York City's Mayor Michael Bloomberg, as well as the police commissioner, as well as Kristen Breitweiser. Her husband was killed on 9/11. She released a statement basically saying she now has a sense that this long wait is now finally over, and she can finally have some closure now that this day has finally come. Wolf?
Jason Carroll at Ground Zero for us in New York City. Thank you. We'll check back with you. I want to hear more reaction from the folks, the New Yorkers who have come to Ground Zero. We'll get reaction from those students and others who are outside the White House chanting. They're celebrating. Chris Lawrence is our Pentagon correspondent. Chris, you're getting more details of this operation that went ahead and successfully eliminated bin Laden.
That's right, Wolf. The president obviously gave some detail. We want to sort of fill in the blanks and give our viewers a better sense of exactly what happened. After all the speculation that Osama bin Laden for years, may have been hiding out in the wilderness area, in the mountainous area between Afghanistan and Pakistan, this all comes down to basically what is a suburb of the capital of Pakistan, Islamabad, the area of Abbottabad. Now, after they identified that this was the compound that they believe Osama bin Laden was hiding, this small assault team practiced their assault several times because this is a populated area, an affluent area. In fact, it's an area where a lot of retired Pakistani generals live. And so they practiced, an official tells us, because they wanted to minimize the amount of collateral damage to the civilians and the innocent people who live around there. Once they got the go-ahead to go in, what they faced was a compound that was about what's been described 8 times larger than any of the buildings around it. It was a 3-story structure with what's been termed extraordinary security. Some of the walls were between 12 and 18 feet. And again, this small U.S. assault team, which included some U.S. Special Forces, made this assault in its entirety about 40 minutes. An official says that Osama bin Laden did resist, and he was killed during that resistance. In other words, after so much talk of perhaps drone strikes and missile strikes, it came down to an actual firefight on the ground in this suburb of Islamabad. We're told that 3 men were also killed in addition to Osama bin Laden, and a woman was killed, U.S. officials say, because she was being used by the people inside as a human shield. Something happened to one of the helicopters that was used to land this assault team into the compound or near the compound. We don't know it right now if it was a mechanical failure, but we do know that the U.S. team destroyed that helicopter on their way out. No U.S. personnel hurt in that operation, Wolf.
Do you know, Chris, if it was a Black Hawk helicopter? I just asked out of historic perspective.
Yeah, obviously you're referring back, the popular movie Black Hawk Down. The Black Hawk is used as an assault helicopter. It was used in Somalia. We don't know exactly what sort of helicopters yet were used in this. We know something happened to one. Obviously, they would never come in with just one helicopter. There were at least, 2, if not more, helicopters involved in a mission like this. One, something happened to it, perhaps a mechanical problem. Perhaps, another sort of problem with it. But from what it was described, they took it out, they destroyed it, so there wouldn't be anything left of it behind.
All right, stand by for Chris. I want you to watch this. Peter Bergen, watch the screen right now. All of our viewers, this is the video. We're getting the first video of the mansion in Abbottabad, about 60 miles or 100 kilometers away from Islamabad. GOTV of Pakistan they showed this video. This is the mansion. You can see the fire there. There was a firefight. U.S. Special Operations team went in there. Navy SEALs were told by our Pentagon correspondent, Chris Lawrence. They went in. You see this mansion. You see the walls around the mansion. You see the fire that's going on there. This is GOTV of Pakistan, exclusive video coming into CNN right now. Let's keep this video up on the screen. Gloria Borger, as we look at this video, you're getting more information about this operation from your sources as well.
Well, what's so interesting to me, Wolf, is that while the president spoke about cooperation on intelligence matters, it's very clear from administration officials that we did not share the fact that we were going to go in with any other country, no country, and it was only shared with a small group of individuals within the United States government. So that's how closely held it was. Another thing that's interesting, Wolf, is that U.S. officials were asked this evening about what they intend to do with his body. And the answer was that it is something the United States takes very seriously. They intend to handle the body of Osama bin Laden with Islamic religion in mind and in the appropriate manner. Now, you know, there are going to be lots of people who are going to say, how do we know this is Osama bin Laden? Remember, we went through that with Saddam Hussein. So that is also something we really need to be watching here about how the administration handles Osama's body.
Bin Laden's body will be the subject of close forensic evidence. I don't know if they'll do a formal autopsy on Bin Laden's body, but they do have enough evidence, DNA evidence, whatever, to confirm that Bin Laden is dead. And I want to just, I just want to remind our viewers, these are pictures coming in from GeoTV in Pakistan. The mansion in the city outside of Islamabad, about 60 miles or 100 kilometers outside of Islamabad, Abbottabad, where the operation unfolded. Bin Laden was hiding out there. He was discovered. They went in. Helicopters went in. I can't emphasize how risky of a military operation potentially this could have been. We also have live pictures from Ground Zero in New York City. Let's show our viewers some of the celebrations going on in New York City. This is where the World Trade Center, of course, was at one point nearly 10 years ago, and it was blown away by those planes. The live pictures coming in from Ground Zero in New York. New York Congressman Gary Ackerman, Democrat of New York's watching all of this unfold. You're a New Yorker, Congressman. The folks in New York are at least as thrilled as the rest of America is, but probably a lot more so given what happened in your city nearly 10 years ago.
Well, it's like being thrilled on steroids, I suppose. It is absolutely remarkable. My reaction all over the place. First of all, domestically, this is like a mission accomplished moment that George Bush only fantasized. I think it puts President Obama...
Hey, Congressman, if you can hear me, I just want you to speak into that microphone. We can barely hear you. So just get a little closer to your speaker over there so you can speak into the microphone so we can hear you a little bit better. Right,
I'm actually on the phone. It's the mission accomplished moment that President Bush only fantasized. This is real. This is one of the biggest deals in the last 100 years. I think it puts the president in a political position that makes him the commander-in-chief of an almost flawless mission of monumental proportions that have unbelievable ramifications. We're going to have to figure out a smart way to include Pakistan in this tremendous victory that we've had because our relationship with them is absolutely of critical importance. But we also have to be mindful, Wolf, that it is not over. This is not taking down the flag of Al-Qaeda and handing over, you know, the proverbial sword. We've cut the head off of the worm. But usually what worms do, diminished and demoralized, they may grow another head. And there is somebody right now who is planning, who is thinking, what can they do? Certainly someone not of the stature of bin Laden, but someone who is going to try to prove their bona fides and has some kind of reaction to this already planned and maybe even in motion. So we have to double down on our security despite the euphoria.
And we are getting word, the State Department, as a precaution, is warning of, quote, enhanced potential for anti-American violence following bin Laden's death. Congressman Ackerman, thanks very much. Peter King is the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee. He's also from New York. He's a Republican. You must be thrilled. I know you, Congressman King. This is a moment you've waited for nearly 10 years, if not longer, going back to '93, the first Al-Qaeda attack on the World Trade Center. I guess we're not hearing Peter King, but we'll hopefully reconnect with Peter King momentarily. this is New York City. Those are pictures from New York City. We'll check in with Peter King in a few moments. He'll give us his reaction to this moment. Once again, Bin Laden is dead. They're celebrating in New York. They're celebrating here in Washington, celebrating all over the country, dare I say, indeed, around the world right now. It's approaching 1 a.m. here on the East Coast. Fran Townsend's our national security contributor, former Homeland Security advisor to President Bush. Fran, tell us how dangerous of a military operation for the Navy SEALs, the other U.S. troops who were involved, flying in by helicopter into Pakistan, going to Abbottabad, the city about 60 miles, 100 kilometers outside of Islamabad, going to this mansion, engaging in a firefight, finding Bin Laden and others, and killing him. How dangerous, how risky of an operation is this for a president of the United States to authorize?
Well, Wolf, we're all celebrating now and incredibly relieved at the great news. But let's remember, it is a settled area. This is not far from Islamabad. It had very high walls around the compound and barbed wire, as Chris Lawrence explains. There are many things that could have gone wrong, Wolf. And imagine how the president would have looked and felt then. This mission could have failed. Bin Laden could have escaped. Americans could have been injured or killed. Or Bin Laden could have not been there. The intelligence could have been faulty. We've seen instances of that. And so it takes a tremendous amount of courage and confidence on the president's part to look at the intelligence, listen to his advisors, like Leon Panetta at the CIA, like Bob Gates. This is a big moment for Secretary Bob Gates, who's preparing to leave the Defense Department. It's a big moment for General David Petraeus, who's getting ready to leave Afghanistan to be nominated as the next CIA director, who would have commanded these troops. And so the president would have had to get the advice of all these advisors, and then ultimately it was his decision, his responsibility to decide whether or not it was worth taking the risk to go in there and do this very difficult operation.
Yeah, because you can imagine if this mission would have failed, the outcry that would have happened, the impact on U.S.-Pakistani relations, it would have sent a message of failure for the United States, which is exactly what the U.S. doesn't need during a very dangerous time like this unfolding in the Middle East, in South Asia, in North Africa right now. So much at stake. I want to show our viewers, Fran, stay with me for a moment, what's happening in Washington, D.C. These are live pictures you're seeing over there at the northwest gate of the White House, people going out there, looking at the crowds. You see a U.S. military officer going out there as well. They've just jam-packed Pennsylvania Avenue outside of the White House. They brought the American flags. They're screaming, they're celebrating. Bin Laden is dead. Now take a look at this picture. This is Ground Zero. We'll go to New York, show our viewers live pictures of Ground Zero in New York City at the same time, and you'll see what's happening there. A reporter is reporting from Ground Zero. This is live pictures coming in right now. It's packed at Ground Zero, and this is video that's been coming in from GeoTV in Pakistan. You saw that mansion in Abbottabad, 60 miles, 100 kilometers outside of Islamabad, the Pakistani capital. You saw that mansion on fire. That's where the firefight took place. That's where the U.S. Special Operations Forces went in with the cooperation of the government of Pakistan, and they went in and killed Bin Laden. I think we've reconnected with Congressman Peter King. He's the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, Republican of New York. Congressman King, did you think this day would ever come?
Oh, Wolf, I really didn't. I got a call tonight from Mike Leiter at the White House at about 10:05 to tell me the president would be addressing the nation and that he would be announcing the death of the killing of Bin Laden. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I lost so many friends and neighbors on September 11th. There's so many New Yorkers did, and we've come close a number of times. And to actually hear that he was dead, that he had been killed, that we got him, I was again feeling a tremendous exhilaration. And let me just say, as a Republican who's disagreed with President Obama on different policies, I want to give him full credit for what he did tonight, for being responsible. He was the commander-in-chief, as Fran Townsend said. This was a delicate operation. We could have very easily, it could have been, Bin Laden really wasn't, it could have been that civilians would have been killed. So many things could have gone wrong. And yet the president had the guts to go forward with it. It was a brilliantly carried out operation. The President of the United States, I salute him for carrying out one of the most significant achievements, I believe, in American history.
You know, when we say it was a gutsy decision by the president, I don't think we can overemphasize that, given the fact that helicopters are going in over what probably could be some areas that are hostile, sending in helicopters into a dangerous environment like this, not knowing precisely what was behind those walls of the compound, this mansion in Abbottabad where bin Laden was hiding out. You don't know if they had shoulder-fired missiles, anti-helicopter capabilities to shoot down helicopters. It does take guts for a president of the United States to sign off on a mission like this. Go ahead and elaborate a little bit on this, because a lot of us remember those helicopters that tried a mission in Iran to free those American hostages back in the late 1970s. That didn't exactly work out.
No, that became almost a symbol of, the defeats of the Carter administration and hurt American prestige all over the world, apart from the tragic loss of American life. No, there's so many things in this operation could have gone wrong. And, the media would have second-guessed it. We know that Al-Qaeda and our enemies overseas would have tried to capitalize on this. And, again, going in there, you never certain until the very moment, was bin Laden there? Could they have had that mansion filled with civilians? Could there have been young kids in there? Could there have been innocent women in there? All of those things to make the United States look horribly bad. And you know how that would have been played up. Also, you're right. You could have had our helicopters shot down. We didn't know all the weapons are in there. You think you do. You try to scout it out as much as you can. You get the best intelligence that you can. But anyone who's involved in intelligence knows until it's over, you never know exactly how accurate the intelligence is. And all you need is that one or two things go wrong, and this could have been a disaster. That's why the president did the right thing in doing it, but it's a lot easier, Wolf, you and me, afterwards to say, yeah, the president did the right thing. He was the guy who was on the line and let him make the decision up front when not everyone, when there was no guarantee this was going to work.
Yeah, he deserves an enormous amount of credit for guts in a situation like this, even if his top advisors, military commanders, Secretary Gates, CIA Director Panetta, his national security advisor Tom Donnelly, even if they all say, you know what, good idea, let's do it, we got good actionable intelligence. In the end, it's up to the commander-in-chief to sign off on a risky decision like this. He did, and in fact, it worked out. Peter King, chairman of the House Homeland Security. Go ahead, Congressman.
I was going to say, if it had not worked, nobody would have heard about Panetta or Gates or Donlin. It would have been the president's fault. So therefore,
absolutely,
he deserves the credit for the working.
He certainly does. All right, Congressman King, we'll continue our conversation with you. Stand by. I want to show our viewers our live pictures coming in from outside the White House. A lot of folks have come to Pennsylvania Avenue outside the north gate of the White House. They're cheering, they're celebrating. Word of mouth, this has now been going on for a while. The crowds are not getting thinner, they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger, even though it's now after 1 a.m. here on the East Coast of the United States. Similar crowds are gathering at Ground Zero in New York right now. In case you missed it, the president made the announcement just a little while ago at the White House. I'll play this little excerpt of what the president said.
Today, at my direction, the United States launched a targeted operation against that compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. A small team of Americans carried out the operation with extraordinary courage and capability. No Americans were harmed. They took care to avoid civilian casualties. After a firefight, they killed Osama bin Laden and took custody of his body.
There's the president. He made a dramatic announcement at the White House. Later on, if you missed it later, we'll play that full statement for you of what the president said, give the full context. Obviously, they worked very, very hard, making sure that every word was precise, precisely what the president and his top advisors wanted to say, knowing this could go down as the most important statement that the president has made, since the most important statement that this president will make in a first term if he's reelected, in a second term, because millions of Americans wanted to hear those words, bin Laden is dead. Justice has been served. Let's go to Jason Carroll over at Ground Zero in New York. Big crowd over there, Jason?
Well, the crowd keeps growing with every passing minute. It's absolutely incredible. People coming down here. I want you to get a sense of what it's like down here at Ground Zero. People bringing flags, and all of a sudden you'll hear cheers. You hear people singing God Bless America, chants of USA. It's really like a celebration that just keeps growing and growing. I want to introduce you to someone right now. This is Bob Gibson. Bob is a retired New York City police officer, and in fact, his son is also a police officer. This night holds special significance for you. You lost people that you know on 9/11. Tell me why this night is significant for you.
Because I never thought this night would come, that we would actually capture or kill Bin Laden. And thank the Lord, he's been eliminated, shall we say, politely.
I think a lot of people feel like you do. I think a lot of people, especially in New York, feel like this night, this day would never come. Obviously, you feel that way as well. I see people nodding behind you.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Right. For years, I said it will happen, and it never happened. And a lot of us finally gave up. But it did come, and like everybody else here, we're overjoyed it happened, that it did get here.
I know one of the families released a statement basically saying that they finally now feel a sense of closure. I know that word closure is thrown out many, many times, but on a night like tonight, do you feel a sense of closure?
Yes, we're still feeling pity for the families that lost loved ones, but I do feel a sense of closure with what happened today and tonight.
You know, I think one thing that is striking to a lot of people here is that I think a lot of people never thought that we would see a celebration taking place down at Ground Zero.
But we do have the celebration, and I would say thank God we do have the celebration.
And I think I want to bring in this gentleman over here as well. Sir, tell me about yourself. You're also a New York City, with the New York City Fire Department. Tell me about why this night is significant for you.
I'm actually retired from the fire department from lung ailments from 9/11. So this is very important to me. It's changed my life in horrible ways. But today is great. It's unbelievable. It's come to justice. And the 343 brothers that we lost here will all know that they didn't die in vain.
You know, I heard one woman as I was coming up here, as I was walking up, and we heard the chants of celebration. She said, it feels surreal to see people celebrating down here, but it is, in a sense, a cause for celebration for some of us. How do you feel?
Well, it's an act of war. And it is a celebration because it's a war that I feel we just won. And like I said, it brings justice to the 343 brothers that we lost on that day. And that's why I'm down here, to let them know that justice has been served.
Is this a night that you ever thought that you would see happen?
No, I didn't. I thought after the first few months that we didn't get to them, that we never would. And I'm extremely happy today. Extremely happy. It's bringing me to tears. I can't even explain the feeling today.
Well, I think a lot of people have the same feelings that you do as well tonight, sir. So thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate that. Wolf, and that's what we're really experiencing as we come down here. More and more people just keep coming down to this particular site. It's incredible. I mean, again, people bringing flags, people singing God Bless America, people chanting. It's really a sense of celebration, and I think a lot of people never thought that this would be the time, this would be the type of place where you would see people actually celebrating at the site of Ground Zero. Wolf?
They've waited almost 10 years for this moment, for the world to know that Bin Laden is dead, especially New Yorkers. They are moved beyond words right now. Jason, I think that's fair to say. I want to come back to you. I want to hear more from these people who have gathered at Ground Zero. Ed Henry is our White House correspondent. He's over at the North Lawn of the White House. Just a few feet from you, outside the North Lawn gate, the fence over there, a lot of people have gathered where you are. Set the scene for those viewers, Ed, who may just be tuning in.
Wolf, as we were being called back to the White House to come to work late on this Sunday evening, and the news started spreading about the president about to announce to the world that Osama bin Laden had been killed, people started coming here to the White House just spontaneously outside the Northwest Gate behind me over my right shoulder, as you say. It started small. They were chanting USA. Then it started growing and growing. I saw dozens of people, and I still can see dozens of people this way. Just heard some fireworks, in fact, going off down on Pennsylvania Avenue, a few hundred feet away from where this crowd is. And they just have also been spontaneously singing the Star-Spangled Banner. And the contrast, as our colleague John King was saying, that on 9/11, outside the Northwest Gate into Lafayette Park, which that crowd of about 40 people from a couple of hours ago is now well into the thousands as I look out there, stretches across Lafayette Park, a large park here in Washington, D.C., as many of our viewers know, now appears to be pretty full. Stark comparison to 9/11, when, as John King was noting, that was where White House aides and the White House press corps were forced out by the Secret Service, thinking a plane was headed here to hit the White House on 9/11. And now instead we are seeing, instead of the horror, the shock of that day, just pure euphoria. Students from George Washington University, Georgetown, other universities here, tourists from around the United States, around the world who happen to be here, pouring into the streets of Washington, coming here to outside the White House gates. It appears now that and look at this overhead shot we have as well. In addition to that shot, I believe we have an overhead shot to give you a sense of the crowd. Now, it appears the lights in the White House residence are out. It appears that maybe the first family has finally gone to sleep, but I can tell you how loud this crowd has been now for well over 2-3 hours. You can guarantee the first family has been hearing these chants, not just of USA, USA, but a few moments ago, I heard this crowd chanting, "Yes, we can. Yes, we can." That chant we're so familiar with from 2008 in the campaign. There's another campaign coming up now, just over a year from now. This is going to be looked through the political prism at some point as we get closer to that election. But on this night, the chants of USA, USA, nothing, I believe, to do with politics, just pure euphoria. Americans coming out into the streets of Washington to celebrate this night, Wolf.
You know, it's interesting, Ed, as we look back, the president made it clear that they've been considering this operation not just for hours, not just for days, but maybe even longer than that. For a few weeks, they've gotten some indications about what this mansion in Abbottabad, 60 miles or 100 kilometers or so outside of Islamabad, the Pakistani capital, that it may be a suspicious compound. There was no internet service there. They were looking at it. They were coordinating, obviously, with elements of the Pakistani government. They have to be very careful because U.S. officials, as you know, Ed, and many of our viewers know, U.S. officials are suspicious of some elements of the Pakistani government, including in the Pakistani intelligence community. So this was a carefully coordinated operation. But there was no indication at all. We got no hints whatsoever over the past few weeks that anything was in the works as far as bin Laden was concerned. It says a lot about this administration that they could keep a secret like this.
It does. As David Gergen was noting earlier, it clearly shows that this national security team is working pretty darn well together. Let's not forget that just a few days ago, the president revamped that team, and a lot of people maybe were saying, well, there's a lot of familiar faces, not a lot of big changes. Well, that continuity may be a good thing as you think about this ongoing struggle against terrorism. The bottom line is Leon Panetta moving from the CIA, which appears to have done an amazing job here in carrying out this operation so carefully and keeping this sensitive intelligence a secret. As you noted, Wolf, Leon Panetta now moving over, at least has been nominated, still has to be confirmed by the Senate, but to replace Bob Gates as the defense secretary. He's had Tom Donilon on board now as national security advisor. He's been deep in this. We're told by senior officials that the president was involved in 5 National Security Council meetings with Tom Donilon, Secretary of State Clinton, and others, as well as Vice President Biden. We should note as well, a former Senate Foreign Relations chairman, a key advisor of this president. 5 National Security Council meetings in March and April that were kept quiet from us in the media as they worked very carefully behind the scenes. You're right. They didn't want it in the U.S. media. They didn't want to share it, perhaps, with Pakistani officials who could have tipped off Al-Qaeda that the U.S. was zeroing in on this. And one other quick piece of information we've just gotten from senior U.S. officials, that compound outside Islamabad, Pakistan, CNN first reported that it was a mansion, a $1 million home. U.S. officials are now saying that even though it was a mansion, as you noted, it had no internet service, no telephone service, undoubtedly to try and escape detection, but also it had 12 to 18-foot walls with barbed wire on the top, a compound Osama bin Laden was in, clearly trying to stay safe and secure, but this U.S. team got in, penetrated it, and killed Osama bin Laden.
Amazing, amazing story. Ed Henry, stand by. We're going to get back to you soon. Let me show our viewers these live pictures we're getting from New York City, Times Square. All of a sudden, you see people gathering in Times Square, which is fully appropriate. That's where people in Manhattan gather, especially on a special occasion like this. That's on the right. On the left, you can see the Ground Zero. That's where people are gathering at Ground Zero right now as well. A dramatic moment as well at Ground Zero. No one could have anticipated how quickly this would all unfold. Once this operation unfolded and they got word not only that the military operation was successful, but they got confirmation that the person who was killed, at least one of the persons was killed, was a 6'4" individual named Osama Bin Laden. They confirmed he's dead. They did all the forensic work. They have retrieved the body, and now they will make sure that they do what is absolutely essential to protect any fallout from this. That's why I want to bring in Gene Meserve, our Homeland Security correspondent. We know that there is a heightened state of alert as a precaution at various U.S. installations around the world. What are you learning, Gene?
Well, of course, the great concern, retribution from Al-Qaeda or a sympathizer or an affiliate. At the White House, officials there are acknowledging that there is this possibility. They say there is no specific threat information at this point in time, but they are taking every reasonable precaution domestically as well as internationally. We know that in New York, for example, the New York City Police Commissioner, Ray Kelly, sent out a message to all commands asking them to be on alert in the wake of this announcement of bin Laden's death. We know that in Philadelphia, the police are stepping up patrols around mosques and synagogues, checking them on an hourly basis. We have not heard anything yet from the Department of Homeland Security, but a former DHS official tells me that they have had plans on the shelf for some time that they could pull off in the event of bin Laden's death that would involve heightened protections around transportation hubs, critical infrastructure, and the like. This official stresses, however, that this isn't just about protective measures, that there also is going to be a big step up in intelligence and intelligence gathering. Bin Laden, he points out, has had 10 years to prepare for this eventuality, and there's been some belief in the U.S. government that he may have deployed people here, that he may have sleeper cells in position here in the United States who would, on his death, be triggered into action. So you can imagine that the intelligence community is going to be looking very hard at people who are already on their radar, and they will be looking additionally for others. The big concern that these may be lone wolves. Those people are much harder to detect than people who are working in groups. Another thing that's been pointed out to me by a couple of officials is the question of succession. What happens now? As strange as it may sound, there's been some stability under Osama bin Laden. There's been some knowledge of what to expect. With his death, what happens to the organization and with its affiliates? Does it become more radical? Do things become even less stable than they have been thus far? Those are some of the things that they're concerned and worried about this evening, Wolf.
But remember, it was only, a week or two ago that Janet Napolitano, the Homeland Security Secretary, she changed the color coding from all the various orange and yellows. Now there are basically two categories. Have they gone up to a higher level of alert as a result of this, out of an abundance of caution, Gene?
We have seen absolutely no indication that they are doing that at this point in time. They also did say, however, when they announced that new threat warning system, that there would be instances where the public would not be aware of what they were doing, that it might go out specifically to law enforcement or to certain sectors, either geographic or in terms of infrastructure, that we might not be informed. But we've heard nothing tonight that would indicate that they're moving the threat level, but we have seen these indications that that additional measures are being taken, certainly by local authorities, though no official word yet from DHS, Wolf.
Yeah, and no official word from any of bin Laden's associates over there, any Al-Qaeda operatives confirming or denying or saying anything, at least not yet. Stand by, Gene. Peter Bergen is here, our national security contributor, someone who was actually interviewed bin Laden back in the 1990s. We've got a picture of you and bin Laden. Do you anticipate that what's left of Al-Qaeda, the classical Al-Qaeda, not Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, Al-Qaeda in North Africa, Al-Qaeda in Asia, the splinter groups, the original Al-Qaeda. Will we hear from them at some point?
I think we'll hear from them very quickly. You know, in Islamic sort of practice, for a start, you bury the body very quickly, and you also recognize the death very quickly.
When you say bury the body quickly, I assume they're going to do a full autopsy to see if he did have kidney problems, what issues he might have had. They're not going to just bury him right away.
They're also going to do a DNA match with other members of the family that they collected DNA from. I mean, they'll also take photographs of them and publish them, as they did in the case of Uday and Hussein
so you think we'll actually see bin Laden's dead face?
I'm sure we will. Just we saw Zakawi's face after he died. I mean, we have to have photographic evidence. We have to have DNA matches, the autopsy. But there is, in Islam, the body has to be buried in 24 hours. That will happen. I think that there will be reprisals, not necessarily from Al-Qaeda itself, although they'll try, but also in Pakistan, you know, bin Laden retained some popularity. His popularity has been receding in recent years, down from a, you know, sort of 60% to maybe a 20% level in recent polling. But I think we will see protests in the streets of Pakistan and some violence.
Against the United States, you mean?
Against American and also Western targets. Don't forget, of course, the United States is not the only country that's involved in this. The largest British terrorist attack in British history was carried out by Al-Qaeda on July 7th, 2005. Al-Qaeda has attacked in many other countries. So, of course, the United States is the main target, but there are other subsidiary targets for Al-Qaeda and its affiliates. A lot of people will feel the necessity to try and you know, create some kind of reprisal against soft American targets. American embassies are pretty hard, but if you're in an American Express office around the world or something that's lightly defended, tomorrow could be a pretty nasty day where there's a Al-Qaeda, you know, presence.
We're showing our viewers the video from GOTV in Pakistan. That's that mansion, that compound in Abbottabad, where the U.S. Special Operations Forces went in, Navy SEALs, among others. They went in by helicopter, and they killed bin Laden. Peter, you want to make a point?
Yeah, I mean, I've been up in this area. Quite interesting. It is, it's sort of near a resort area called Murray. It's quite hilly. It's up towards Azad Kashmir, which is the so-called free part of Kashmir, where a lot of militant groups that are associated with Al-Qaeda have had a presence. And I and other people have said, would it be possible that bin Laden might be up in this Kashmir area, along with other places that we've speculated about, the Pakistani tribal regions. One thing I do want to say, Wolf, adding to what you said about the danger of this mission, Abbottabad is a pretty long way from any American sort of facility where you can get a helicopter out of.
The closest ones would be in Afghanistan.
Well, you know, there are about 200 U.S. Special Forces in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, as of February.
In Islamabad?
Not necessarily in Islamabad, but in around the country. But
with helicopters?
That's, yeah, these would have had to come from Afghanistan,
yeah,
I think.
That's what I assume.
In terms of...
All right. Hold on a minute,
yeah.
Because I want to bring Gloria Borger into this conversation. Gloria, you're doing reporting for us. What are you learning?
Well, first of all, I want to give you some reporting, Wolf, from our senior congressional correspondent, Dana Bash. She is reporting that a source familiar with the operation confirms that indeed Osama bin Laden was shot in the head during the U.S. raid. According to a briefing that this source received, the source would not go into the details of the others were killed, except to say that the operation was conducted very carefully not to harm women and children. So that we do know that indeed he was shot in the head. One other thing, Wolf, that is very interesting to me for those of us who have been covering the debate of how much intelligence the detainees have given the administration about the whereabouts of Osama bin Laden and his top lieutenants. In this briefing given by administration officials, it is clear to me that detainees were the ones who flagged for us the people who have been providing direct help to Osama bin Laden and his lieutenants. In particular, one courier had been named. They were given his nickname, and they were not able to identify his real identity 4 years ago, Wolf. This gives you some sense about how long they've been working on this. 4 years ago, they actually identified his real name, but it was only 2 years ago that they could identify exactly the area where this courier and his brother were operating. Then it took them longer to find out exactly where they were living. By August 2010, they found the residence, and it was where we know now that this so-called mansion was. So you get a sense, really, of how long and arduous this process was, and also of the importance of the intelligence information that has been provided by the detainees. Very important.
Fascinating details, Gloria, and I know we're going to be getting a lot more of these details of how the operation unfolded, what we in the journalistic community call the tick-tock, the second-by-second, moment-by-moment operation. You're going to be seeing a lot of that, hearing a lot about that here on CNN, certainly reading a lot about it elsewhere as well. I'm sure all the details will come out. Except for what's really classified. They don't want to do anything that would undermine national security sources and methods that could further undermine future operations. So they'll release what we call sanitized versions, but a lot of these details are just beginning to come out. Gloria, stand by for a moment. David Gergen is with us, our senior political analyst as well, who's worked for 4 American presidents, appreciates the history, David, of what's going on right now. You know, we sort of throw that word out a lot, an historic moment. I dare say this is truly, truly an historic moment.
It is an historic moment, Wolf, and many there on Times Square were citing the idea that it's almost as if tonight we won a war. We've been in a long struggle. This Osama bin Laden was not only the most hated man by most Americans since Hitler, but he was also the most hunted man in the world. And we've been after this such a long time, and I think it's bringing out this sense not only of relief, but of celebration that we finally won one. And this is a night for President Obama. It's the best night of his presidency. We're going to hear more and more about Obama got Osama. But within the next few days, as we get into this TikTok, there are a lot of questions that have been raised by the reporting. Gloria's report just added to this, Peter Bergen's report, about what happened, what really happened in Pakistan. It appears that at least since August, that's 9 months ago, Osama's been living in this compound, this mansion. And since the mansion, as Gloria reported earlier, was built 5 or 6 years ago, 8 or 9 times bigger than anything else around, the signs point to the idea that it was built for him. He may have been there for several years. If he's been there for that long a time, is there any doubt that people, officials in Pakistan must have known and must have sat on that the United States had to find this out on its own, and only at the last minute got the cooperation of the Pakistanis, for which a president thanked the Pakistanis tonight? But there are going to be a lot of questions. How long was Osama there, and how long did some people in Pakistan actually know he was there?
Good questions, although we must point out, David, the president did give a shout-out, an expression of appreciation to President Zardari of Pakistan for the assistance provided to the United States. It took guts, I must say, on President Zardari's part, because bin Laden has a base of support not only within Pakistan, but within his own establishment, whether the intelligence community, the military, or other elements of Pakistan's government. So President Zardari got that vote of confidence from the President of the United States. Let's not forget that.
Very, very important that the president did that. And I do think it will help with the strained relations. But I think in the background of this, the subtext of this story is going to be, how long has he been there? And by the way, can you imagine anybody going into a hearing to become next Secretary of Defense in a better position than Leon Panetta? They're going to crown him when
I
he
smell
goes through that
unanimous consent on that confirmation as Secretary of Defense. All right, David, stand by for a moment. We've got a lot more to take. We'll hear from the President of the United States. John King is standing by over at the Magic Map. He's going to show us precisely what happened. The celebrations are continuing not only outside the White House, but at Ground Zero in New York City. We've got live pictures from the White House, live pictures from New York City. We're going to go to Afghanistan. We've got a live reporter on the scene over there. Our coverage, I must say, is only just beginning. Stay with us.
This is CNN Breaking News.
All right, that was at the New York Mets Philadelphia Phillies game when they got the word that Bin Laden is dead. The crowd erupting with, you could hear the cheering, USA, USA, USA. We're hearing that all over the country, certainly hearing it outside the White House on Pennsylvania Avenue, outside the North Gate of the White House. Those are live pictures on the left part of your screen. On the right part of your screen at Ground Zero, no more sensitive spot. As we approach the 10th anniversary of 9/11, the crowds have gathered in Lower Manhattan as well. It's now past 1:30 a.m. here on the East Coast of the United States, and the crowds are only getting bigger and bigger at the White House, at Ground Zero, elsewhere. Folks are just coming up and they're celebrating. Bin Laden is dead. So many Americans thought they would probably maybe not be able to celebrate as they are right now. But it was almost exactly about 2 hours or so ago when the President of the United States walked into the East Room of the White House and made the announcement.
Today, at my direction, the United States launched a targeted operation against that compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. A small team of Americans carried out the operation with extraordinary courage and capability. No Americans were harmed. They took care to avoid civilian casualties. After a firefight, they killed Osama bin Laden and took custody of his body.
That was the president. Later on, we'll be replaying the entire statement that he made. Chris Lawrence is our man over at the Pentagon. He's got details of how the operation unfolded. For those viewers, Chris, who may just be tuning in here in the United States or around the world, this was a very, very risky, dangerous military operation.
Yeah, exactly, Wolf. And we may never know the names of some of these intelligence and special forces operators who conducted this mission, but they certainly undertook incredible risk to get this mission done. And when you hear some of the fascinating intelligence details of how this came together, you come away somewhat with the perception that in some ways, Osama bin Laden may have been the architect of his own destruction, in that he built a highly secure, isolated compound. But because it was isolated, he had to use couriers to get information and supplies in and out. And ultimately, it was those couriers who would be his downfall. As Gloria Borgia reported just a few minutes ago, the intelligence action on this really started years ago, but it really came to a head in January. That's when the U.S. found out that indeed Osama bin Laden may be located in a compound in Pakistan. By February, they had determined that the intelligence was good enough to take action. And by March, the president started to convene some National Security Council meetings with high-level officials, the last of which were held just about a week and a half to 2 weeks ago. Now, when this operation went down and what they were learning, this courier and his brother, who lived in this million-dollar mansion, had no real discernible amount or means of income. In other words, how do these two people afford a compound that's 8 times bigger than anything around it in a very affluent area? And then you start to look at the compound. The terrace had a 7-foot wall around it. It had interior walls. Some of the outside walls were 12 to 18 feet. Where other residents around them would take their trash out on the street, these residents burned their trash. And for a $1 million mansion, it had no cell or internet service. All of these were clues to some of the intelligence officials that something wasn't right. They determined, to the best of their ability, that their assessment was this was built specifically to house and harbor a high-value target. And as they worked that information, they determined that, yes, they believed it was Osama bin Laden, his youngest wife, and some of his children that were living there as well. When the assault came down, they looked at it and said, this is it. And when the word came down and President Obama gave the okay for this elite team that of the U.S. operators, which included some special operations units or members, to go in and try to take that compound, they apparently practiced how to do it beforehand, because when this compound was built, it was very isolated. It was towards the outskirts. But in the meantime, over the previous 5 years, other homes had been built around it. So now you've got a situation where there potentially could be vast civilian casualties. So they practiced this operation to try to minimize those civilian casualties. when they eventually went in, they went in during a helicopter drop, coming in through helicopters, coming into this compound. From what we're hearing from officials is that Osama bin Laden did resist. And our congressional correspondent, Dana Bash, is hearing from her sources that it came down to a firefight, and Osama bin Laden was shot in the head during this firefight in which the U.S. forces were able to take possession of his body. Wolf.
We know, Chris, that the U.S. government had a $25 million reward for the arrest, the capture, the killing of bin Laden. Do we know if anyone is eligible for that?
That I don't know, Wolf. You know, again, it goes back to the fact that, you know, when these intelligence and these special operations forces, they volunteer for this very dangerous duty. That's true. But from all accounts, this was a highly dangerous mission. The security around this area was called extraordinary. So the risk that this small team of U.S. operators took to try to accomplish this mission, again, because they're in the intelligence field, they're special operations, we don't know. We might not see their faces. We may never hear personally their stories, but they obviously took great risks to get this job accomplished.
They certainly did, and mission was in fact accomplished. We'll probably find out if somebody, a Pakistani or somebody else within bin Laden's inner circle, ever did provide the initial information leading to the capture, the killing of bin Laden. Chris, stand by for a moment. John King is over at the Magic Wall for us. John, the location of this so-called mansion, about 60 miles or 100 kilometers outside of the Pakistani capital of Islamabad, it's significant. Walk us through this.
Significant, Wolf, in part because how many times over the last 10 years have the Pakistani government officials told us, no, Osama bin Laden is here in Afghanistan? How many times have the Afghanistani officials tell us, no, he's somewhere here, Waziristan perhaps, in the mountainous region here? It turns out tonight, and let's take a closer look, and we'll measure it out for you as we zoom in. Turns out, where was he? About 120 miles to the east of the Afghanistan border. Waziristan, one of the places, the tribal regions where it was said so often, Osama bin Laden's probably hiding here. Instead, no. 120 miles to the east, 30 miles north of Islamabad. And let's take a closer look at this town, Abbottabad. We'll take a closer look as we come in, and you see somewhere in the ballpark of 1 million people. You see it's pretty highly developed here. A lot of tight, very closely in residential areas. You come up here and you look up here, a lot of educational institutions here. I want to bring you in on a location here. This is where we are told tonight, somewhere right in this area here, people are saying is where this played out. You see a large complex here. You see other large complexes here. You see a lot of building here, walled off areas, residential complexes within, walled off, big complex here. And then Chris Lawrence was just saying they were worried about civilian casualties because of other development around. This is one of the places we are told to look tonight. We don't have an exact location yet, but this is the area. And I want to just shrink this down a little bit and just show you again, bring up the terrain of this town. It's in a mountain valley. You see around here, around the outskirts, there are mountains around the outskirts. You come into a valley. It's a city of about 1 million people. Again, just look at this highly dense population up in here, Wolf. But as we look into this here, not in the mountains, not in Afghanistan, not in a cave in Waziristan, but in a very highly developed, highly populated area, we are told, is where this special operation played out. It'll be fascinating to get more of the details on just how they did this, but you can see right in here, if the SEALs went into an area like this, what a high-stakes, high-risk operation to try to capture and ultimately to kill Osama bin Laden.
And if they go in by helicopter, they come down on ropes from the helicopter, you can only imagine how vulnerable those Navy SEALs might have been. John, go back and show us the big picture, because I want our viewers to get a sense of how far from the Afghan border, and the U.S. has a lot of military personnel, more than 100,000 troops in Afghanistan right now. If those helicopters did in fact come from a U.S. base in Afghanistan, they would have had a nice journey there. Give us the big picture once again.
Absolutely. U.S. military installations on this side of the border in Afghanistan, again, for the past 10 years, as we have asked the question of presidents, of CIA directors, of anybody in the United States government, and of people in the Afghan and Pakistan governments, where is Osama bin Laden? The answer has usually been somewhere in this ballpark here. U.S. military installations here. You mentioned 100,000 plus troops. The president himself, and we are now told by sources, launching this operation, not telling the government of Pakistan, only telling them after the operation took place. U.S. bases here coming across the border. And again, let's measure out exactly what we're talking about. As you watch, you zoom in here, and you come off, and then we hit the measure, and you see exactly where we're talking about. 120 miles, once they came over the border, Wolf, 120 miles in, you're 30 miles north of the capital of Pakistan. Right in here, this takes out, again, for years we have focused over here, the tribal areas, the cave areas, the ungovernable areas of Pakistan. But instead, it turns out Osama bin Laden was living in a large city. This is not a suburb. This is a city of about 100,000, I'm sorry, of about 1 million people when you come into it here. And you come in and you see how densely populated it is. A very different kind of operation that for years people have talked about, finding bin Laden in a cave, finding bin Laden in a remote area, finding bin Laden protected by tribes up in the hills. No, in fact, it turns out bin Laden was hiding in a very densely populated area. And again, we are told to look at a complex something like this, somewhere in this ballpark over here, we are told tonight, one of the focus of the operations. And you can see some of the walls, you can see large spaces, but you can also see all around it, densely populated areas, which shows you the risks that any of the elite forces that went in looking for him, not only the risks of the firefight that we know took place, but risks of civilian casualties. And again, a very bold decision by the President of the United States to launch this operation and tell the Pakistani government after the fact that U.S. Special Forces were right here on the ground, Wolf.
Yep. It's as if the President of the United States, he got that 3 a.m. phone call, and he, whether it was 3 a.m. or whatever time it was, and he made the decision. It was a gutsy decision, as you point out, to go ahead and give the authorization as Commander-in-Chief to launch this operation. John, excellent presentation. Stand by for a moment because I want to bring in, just show our viewers what's going on at the White House at Ground Zero. These pictures, folks are still gathering, even though it's now approaching 2 a.m. here on the East Coast. They're gathering and celebrating the death of Osama bin Laden. Nick Payton-Walsh is our correspondent in Kabul, Afghanistan. Nick, you're getting more information from sources there as well. Tell our viewers in the United States and around the world what you're learning.
Well, at present, I think we have two conflicting viewpoints here. Pakistani senior intelligence official I've spoken to has made it clear that there were Pakistani intelligence operatives on the ground during this operation, which seemed, to be honest, to be the other side of the coin, completely conflict with what our sources are hearing in Washington. I think it's obvious why the Pakistanis would want to show they were involved in this. That's to preempt accusations of collusion that perhaps some part of the Pakistani intelligence establishment, which is pretty all-pervasive, frankly, in Pakistan, may have known that bin Laden had been hiding there for a long time. I think it's also interesting to point out where this compound appears to have been based in a big, bustling Pakistani city. Now, just bear in mind that a lot of the recent Taliban activity has been in the southern city of Karachi. It seems as though the Taliban have been moving away from those tribal areas where the drone strikes can easily pick them off, and have been very successful of late, if you speak to some American officials, been moving to larger cities so they can hide in the bustling population. So hearing that bin Laden was not in Karachi, the kind of hub of Taliban, but in another bustling city, hiding somewhere else, that's not enormously surprising. But I think we're going to see, really, the Pakistanis having to explain how they were involved in this operation in the coming hours. It would, to me, be enormously surprising, given the sheer breakdown of trust in the last few months between Washington and Islamabad, given what they've been saying to each other about drone strikes, about intelligence cooperation here, which apparently had been on hold for quite some time, we shouldn't forget, according to a senior Pakistani official I've spoken to, that it would have been remarkably strange for the Americans, the full scope of this hit, this operation with them prior to launching it, Wolf.
You know, Nick, a lot of Americans will now say, mission accomplished. Bin Laden is dead. It's time to pull out of Afghanistan. The United States, as you know, has 100,000 troops in Afghanistan. The troops are scheduled to start withdrawing, at least at a modest level, later this year, this summer. All those troops are supposed to be out by the end of 2014. But I suspect, given the death of bin Laden, a lot of Americans say, well, it's time to leave and move on. Have Afghan officials expressed any concern to you that maybe the appetite for a prolonged U.S. military stay in Afghanistan may be going away?
I think they were already concerned before this, frankly. I do think there's part of the Karzai administration here that does not want to see hear a rushing sound, a sucking sound as the American forces pull away from here in the next coming years. We haven't spoken to them today, but I can definitely say there'll be two narratives from this. The first one will be with bin Laden dead, the Al-Qaeda threat is, the story of that, as it were, has come to an end. So yes, as you say, we can begin to start drawing down here, but that leaves the whole nation-building question unanswered. And obviously the reason why Afghanistan became a haven for Al-Qaeda Al-Qaeda in the first place was because it was a failed state under the Taliban. So there'll be an alternative narrative in this too, saying that we need to stay here, finish the job, and be sure that the new Al-Qaeda, if one emerges after bin Laden's death, perhaps a regenerated or a different generation of leaders maybe, that they don't seek to come back here and use Afghanistan as a base to launch attacks on the U.S. Wolf?
Nick Payton-Walsh in Kabul for us. Stand by. Fran Townsend is our national security contributor, the former Homeland Security advisor to President Bush. Fran, you know, even earlier, U.S. intelligence officials were saying there may be 100 or 200 Al-Qaeda operatives left in Afghanistan. Now with bin Laden dead, you will fully, and the fact that the U.S. is spending about $2 billion a week, $100 billion plus a year in Afghanistan, the pressure no doubt will mount on the president to start withdrawing even more rapidly than he may have anticipated.
Yeah, I think that's right, Wolf, as a political matter. But let's just be clear. I mean, I think we need to put this in context. That bin Laden is dead does not mean the war against terrorism is over. We've been fighting these fractured cells. We've seen the U.S. government, military, and intelligence officials deployed around the world who continue to track these networks. They are nowhere near as dangerous. Bin Laden was an inspiration for recruiting and financing and weapons and all those things. So by no means are these other cells as nearly as dangerous as he is. But we will continue to have to fight in chaotic places, especially where we know that bin Laden and Al-Qaeda had really been attracted, whether that's Yemen or Somalia, the Mali-Mauritania border. We saw this recent bombing in Marrakesh and Morocco. And so the war on terror is not over. This is a significant victory, though, Wolf.
It's something that Americans have been waiting for a very, very long time. Dare I say, many Americans for at least almost 10 years, and so many others going back to the 90s, 93, the bombing of the first World Trade Center. Peter Bergen is here. He wants to weigh in as well. Peter, we're only beginning to digest what this will mean for the U.S. military operation in Afghanistan, the NATO operation, if you will.
Well, you know, there was big concerns in Afghanistan. I was there in December about President Obama's initial announcement that we would be drawing down in a significant way in July 2011. You may recall in November at Lisbon, President Obama announced a rather different policy that we would be there really in strength until December 2014. I think a lot of Afghans breathed a huge sigh of relief. They know the Afghan army is still weak. They know the Afghan government is still weak. They're looking for, you know, the capacity to build up the Afghan army so that it can, you know, keep the Taliban at bay, so that the Taliban doesn't bring back not only Al-Qaeda, but lots of other Islamist terrorist groups that were embedded with the Taliban when they controlled Afghanistan.
So so we're just going to begin to appreciate what's going on. I think in the days to come, we'll fully appreciate the nature of what this means for the overall mission in Afghanistan, cooperation with Pakistan, and all of that. Peter, thanks very much. Those are live pictures, by the way, from outside the White House, the north lawn of the White House on Pennsylvania Avenue, where folks have gathered even as we approach 2 a.m. here on the East Coast. They've got the flags. They're screaming, they're shouting, they're celebrating USA, USA, USA. That's here in Washington, D.C., outside the White House. In New York City, they're celebrating as well, especially down at Ground Zero at the site of what was the World Trade Center nearly 10 years ago. CNN's Jason Carroll is on the scene for us. Are folks beginning to leave, or are they still showing up, Jason?
Oh, no sign of leaving at all, Wolf. I mean, more and more people keep coming down here to Ground Zero. They're playing bagpipes. In fact, I ran into one of my coworkers. She was at a restaurant nearby. She told me that when the announcement came on the television, people went silent. All of a sudden, people started handing out American flags. They've been bringing them down here. They've been chanting. And more people are coming down here. I want to get some of the stories that we've been hearing about, because obviously, now that we've heard about what's happening, people are coming down here to reflect. They're coming down here, Wolf, to celebrate. I want to introduce you to Anita, Valerie, and Ronaldo. Now, you have a very special, this is a very special night for you, because you remember when it all happened back on 9/11.
Yes, we were here working in the area, This is our community. We watched the planes hit the buildings. We watched the people jump out the windows. We watched people flee in the area. And the day after 9/11, we still reported to work. We still had to come into the area, watch the cleanup, see the cleanup. We had to do our work within the community, was to bring Wall Street circuits back up, bring the customers back up as Verizon workers. And each day we watch this. We even watching now as they try to rebuild. This is very special to us because this now is finally a closure to the families who has lost their loved ones. It's a closure for the community, this community. It's a closure for New York City. It's a closure for the United States, and it's a closure now for the entire world.
And Valerie Ronaldo, are you feeling that as well? Are you feeling a sense of closure at this time?
Definitely, definitely. From everything that happened to what we see now, the World Trade Center coming back, it's definitely closure to people that lost family and friends. It's just a beautiful feeling.
And it's amazing that this, Osama Bin Laden, his death, we also now was at work for this occasion.
Thank you so much for coming down. Well, very quickly, I also want to bring in Lisa and Mark Wilkie. They actually were watching the television, saw what was happening, decided to come down here tonight. Tell me about what this experience has been like for you, because you guys live here in the neighborhood.
Right. I think it's just an important part to be part of history and be here and celebrate with other New Yorkers and people in the United States about the celebration that finally he's been captured and obviously killed. So
you also heard Valerie talk about a sense of closure at this point. Do you feel more of a sense of closure at this time?
Well, I'm not sure if I feel a sense of closure yet, but it's certainly a celebration. There's a spontaneous outpouring of emotion. Perhaps it'll be closure at some point in the future, but it's certainly nice to come down here and feel a sense of community and people sort of rejoicing in what's happened tonight.
And I think for a lot of people who aren't from New York, Wolf, to be able to come down and see how the neighborhood has changed, how the neighborhood has grown, how you've seen Ground Zero really develop over the past few years, and then you see something like this happening today, that's just got to be really an incredible feeling as well.
Yeah, it's a great thing for certainly this neighborhood, but for the country, more importantly, that perhaps we've turned a corner a bit.
All right, we want to thank both of you. Thank you very much for coming down. Again, Wolf, it's really incredible. I know you were saying, do we get any sense of people leaving? I wonder what's going to happen as the hours go by and then people start waking up and the rush hour starts. The crowd just keeps continuing to grow. I want to show you over here, more and more flags, more and more people coming down, chanting, singing. It's really just sort of a sense of a celebration that's happening down here. I know you've been experiencing it as well in Washington, D.C., at the White House, happening here as well, down here at Ground Zero. Wolf, back to you.
An appropriate place, I must say, Jason, for folks to celebrate Ground Zero almost exactly 10 years ago in September. It'll be 10 years since those Twin Towers went down. Bin Laden now is down. He has been killed. We also have live pictures I want to show you from outside the White House. Outside of the north gate of the White House, the northwest gate. This is Pennsylvania Avenue, Lafayette Park. You can see the crowds there. Large crowds have gathered. We're told a lot of students from George Washington University, Georgetown University, American University, some of the other schools in the area. The students coming down, they're getting ready to end their semesters, but they wanted to celebrate. Many of these students, of course, remember what happened almost exactly 10 years ago when Al-Qaeda operatives did what they did in New York, Pennsylvania, and right here in Washington over at the Pentagon. Gloria Borger is watching all of this unfold for us. Gloria, rare that a president of the United States can make an announcement like this president did. Yes. I guess it's about 3 hours ago.
Well, it's right, Wolf, and I just literally got off the phone with a National Security Council official who, described this as one of the best days of his life, and I was asking about the confirmation about the fact that this is indeed Osama bin Laden's body. And he made it very clear to me that they have multi-confirmations on this and that they had the ability to do what he called run images of body and face of Osama bin Laden. I think there's a possibility that we may see that at some point, but he made it very clear to me that the intelligence community knows that Osama bin Laden is dead. And I think that's something, Wolf, that we're all just starting to absorb this evening.
Thanks very much, Gloria, for that. Gloria doing excellent reporting like all of our reporters, our analysts. This story is an historic story, certainly one all of us will remember for the rest of our lives, where we were, what we were doing when we heard the President of the United States inform us and the world that Osama bin Laden is dead. We'll continue our coverage right after this quick break. Much more coming up. Stay with CNN. The reaction only just beginning to pour in.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Osama bin Laden, the very face of global terror for more than a decade, is now dead.
He was killed by a small group of American forces inside Pakistan.
A surgical strike on a man who appears to have been hiding in plain sight in a mansion just outside Islamabad.
Of innocent men, women, and children. It was nearly 10 years ago that a bright September day was darkened by the worst attack on the American people in our history. The images of 9/11 are seared into our national memory. Hijacked planes cutting through.
His death was an instant cause for celebration in Washington. An exuberant crowd formed quickly outside the White House singing the national anthem as President Barack Obama made the official announcement. It is right now just after 2 o'clock in the morning in Washington, and those crowds are still outside the White House.
Hello, I'm Rosemary Church.
And I'm John Voss. We want to welcome our viewers from the United States and around the world to our special coverage. News of bin Laden's death has been flashing around the world for several hours now. The bin Laden, the Al-Qaeda terror chief who masterminded the September 11th attacks on the United States a decade ago, was killed during a U.S. operation in Pakistan. His body now in U.S. custody. U.S. President Barack Obama confirming the dramatic news in a rare late-night address broadcast around the world.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children. It was nearly 10 years ago that a bright September day was darkened by the worst attack on the American people in our history. The images of 9/11 are seared into our national memory. Hijacked planes cutting through a cloudless September sky, the Twin Towers collapsing to the ground, black smoke billowing up from the Pentagon, the wreckage of Flight 93 in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where the actions of heroic citizens saved even more heartbreak and destruction. And yet we know that the worst images are those that were unseen to the world. The empty seat at the dinner table, children who were forced to grow up without their mother or their father, parents who would never know the feeling of their child's embrace, nearly 3,000 citizens taken from us, leaving a gaping hole in our hearts. On September 11th, 2001, in our time of grief, the American people came together. We offered our neighbors a hand, and we offered the wounded our blood. We reaffirmed our ties to each other and our love of community and country. On that day, no matter where we came from, what God we prayed to, or what race or ethnicity we were united as one American family. We were also united in our resolve to protect our nation and to bring those who committed this vicious attack to justice. We quickly learned that the 9/11 attacks were carried out by Al-Qaeda, an organization headed by Osama bin Laden, which had openly declared war on the United States and was committed to killing innocents in our country and around the globe. And so we went to war against Al-Qaeda to protect our citizens, our friends, and our allies. Over the last 10 years, thanks to the tireless and heroic work of our military and our counterterrorism professionals, we've made great strides in that effort. We've disrupted terrorist attacks and strengthened our homeland defense. In Afghanistan, we removed the Taliban government, which had given bin Laden and Al-Qaeda safe haven and support. And around the globe, we worked with our friends and allies to capture or kill scores of Al-Qaeda terrorists, including several who were a part of the 9/11 plot. Yet, Osama bin Laden avoided capture and escaped across the Afghan border into Pakistan. Meanwhile, Al-Qaeda continued to operate from along that border and operate through its affiliates across the world. And so shortly after taking office, I directed Leon Panetta, the director of the CIA, to make the killing or capture of bin Laden the top priority of our war against Al-Qaeda, even as we continued our broader efforts to disrupt, dismantle, and defeat his network. Then, last August, after years of painstaking work by our intelligence community, I was briefed on a possible lead to bin Laden. It was far from certain, and it took many months to run this thread to ground. I met repeatedly with my national security team as we developed more information about the possibility that we had located bin Laden hiding within a compound deep inside Pakistan. And finally, last week, I determined that we had enough intelligence to take action and authorized an operation to get Osama bin Laden and bring him to justice. Today, at my direction, the United States launched a targeted operation against that compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. A small team of Americans carried out the operation with extraordinary courage and capability. No Americans were harmed. They took care to avoid civilian casualties. After a firefight, they killed Osama bin Laden and took custody of his body. For over 2 decades, bin Laden has been Al-Qaeda's leader and symbol, and has continued to plot attacks against our country and our friends and allies. The death of bin Laden marks the most significant achievement to date in our nation's effort to defeat Al-Qaeda.
Okay, let's see where all of this took place. Not in the wilds of Pakistan, as many thought, but near the capital, Islamabad, in a place called Abbottabad, about 100 kilometers north of Islamabad. And just next door to Pakistan is Afghanistan, where Osama bin Laden launched the 9/11 attacks against the United States a decade ago. It is from Afghanistan that bin Laden then fled after U.S. forces invaded that country just weeks after the attacks on New York and Washington. CNN's Nick Payton-Walsh joins us now live from the Afghan capital, Kabul. Nick, what are you learning about this operation, this successful operation in Pakistan?
Well, what we're hearing, and I stress this from American officials across the Atlantic in D.C., we are hearing that helicopters dropped special forces into this compound. Now, we just need to explain, I think, what that means in terms of how much the Pakistani government would have had to know about this operation. Obviously, to send helicopters that far into Pakistani territory, they would have come up on Pakistani radar at some point. Pakistani officials are insisting that they had prior knowledge of this operation and that Pakistani intelligence operatives were on the ground during that, although that seems to be denied by American officials. So a definite conflict of opinion there as to who actually was involved on the ground. One Pakistani senior intelligence official saying he did not know who actually pulled the trigger, although it seems to be clear there were American special forces involved. Pictures on local television showing a fire in the area around there. It's not clear if that is the precise compound where the attack happened, but it's also key to point out this happened in a busy town, in a busy city. Previously, Al-Qaeda and militant insurgents here had all been thought to have been hiding out in the tribal areas where U.S. drones could pick them off one by one. But there had been a trend recently for the Taliban to move into Karachi, for example, in the south, big, bustling, populated cities where it's easier to hide yourself. And it does appear, obviously, that bin Laden had a similar tactic, hiding himself out in Abbottabad. John?
Yeah, but Nick, when we look at what the details of this, $1 million mansion in a very poor area, 18-foot-tall walls surrounding this mansion, which had been built some time ago. Apparently, bin Laden had been there for some months with his youngest wife. How is it possible that the Pakistani government was not aware of his presence?
I think they'll be under enormous pressure to answer that question. It isn't, I suppose, feasibility. He never left that compound. If he arrived under great secrecy, there was apparently no telephone or internet access. to it. So you could conceive perhaps that he was there without their knowledge, although of course there will be that question asked again and again in the next 24 hours. The relationship of trust between Washington and Islamabad really frayed in the past few months because of drone strikes, because of the autonomous behavior of US intelligence operatives within the country. Remember, in the past, Pakistan said the drone strikes were all run in cooperation with Pakistani intelligence who were helping them. Recently, they said America was operating unilaterally inside the country. No greater evidence of that new American policy than today, where they seem to have gone straight for bin Laden themselves, saying they did not inform Pakistan beforehand.
And Nick, we've both spoken to jihadists who, over the years, have always taken a great deal of pride in the fact that bin Laden was never caught, that he was still on the run, that he managed to evade the United States for such a very long time. What will be the reaction now among all of those people from Pakistan to Afghanistan, where you are, to Gaza, all of these jihadists?
I think there are some people who regarded him as a figurehead, as perhaps a symbol of resistance against America's presence here in this region. Of course, there are many ordinary Pakistanis and Afghans who consider him and his like an enormous problem for them getting on with their daily lives. So there will be a split opinion here, though, but I do think we have to be careful in this area and across the border in Pakistan for retaliation. So many of these networks have said that when bin Laden dies, they will take spectacular action. There have been previously in the past few days concerns about a spectacular attack here, but that obviously was not publicly linked to any operation against bin Laden. I spoke to ISAF, NATO forces here, and they say their alert status has not changed, but certainly concerns on both sides of the border. There could be some retaliation, John.
And obviously, this story is still developing. We're just a few hours since the announcement was made by the US president, but what will be the impact on the Taliban in Afghanistan, where you are right now?
I think operationally, it will probably have not a vast effect. The Taliban's leadership has been changing enormously over the past few years. Many reports that the sort of senior figures like Mullah Omar, Hekmatyar, various individuals at the top end are less connected with the operations on the ground, which are often run by hot-headed, angry, young insurgents, indigenous sometimes, put in that position, running their own units against the Americans, because a lot of the American activity here has been to take out the middle-level leadership, connecting them with the kind of Quetta Shura, as it's known across the border in Pakistan. Bin Laden, though, a symbolic figure, kind of a totem, really, a huge figurehead for insurgents here, and obviously the reason, really, why America came here in the first place. So his death, certainly a blow to morale for the average insurgent here, but I'm not entirely sure yet we can say that there will be an operational impact. In fact, what we might see is an uptick in insurgent activity to show they're not beaten and to show some sort of retaliation against US forces.
There are still so many unanswered questions in this story. Nick Payton-Walsh live for us in Kabul. Thank you, Nick. Rosemary?
There surely are. Well, former US President George W. Bush first led the charge against bin Laden, of course, and here's what he said before leading the multinational attack on those who were sheltering him in Afghanistan. Take a listen.
Osama bin Laden is just one person. He is representative of networks of people who absolutely have made their cause to defeat the freedoms that we understand, and we will not allow him to do so.
You want bin Laden dead?
I want him held. I want justice. And there's an old poster out west, as I recall, that said "Wanted, dead or alive."
And we all remember that. Well, after hearing of bin Laden's death from President Obama, Bush issued a statement, and I'm quoting here, "This momentous achievement marks a victory for America, for people who seek peace around the world, and for all those who lost loved ones on September 11, 2001. The fight against terror goes on, but tonight America has sent an unmistakable message. No matter how long it takes, justice will be done." Well, bin Laden has also been linked to another attack on the World Trade Center back in 1993, and he has been on the FBI's 10 most wanted list since 1999. That was all while former President Bill Clinton occupied the Oval Office, and in a statement, Mr. Clinton says, "I congratulate the President, the National Security Team, and the members of our armed forces on bringing Osama bin Laden to justice after more than a decade of murderous Al-Qaeda attacks."
Of course, reaction coming in from around the world as well. Australia's Prime Minister is weighing in. Here's what Julia Gillard had to say just moments ago.
Osama Bin Laden declared war on innocent people, and today he has paid the price for that declaration. Osama Bin Laden was directly responsible for despicable acts of violence against innocent people, and he inspired acts of violence by others. Today of all days, we remember the lives lost.
We're also getting reaction from the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. He says the state of Israel joins in the joy of the American people on this historic day in which Osama bin Laden was killed. This is a resounding victory for justice, freedom, and for the joint values of all the countries that fight side by side determinedly against terror.
And Chris Lawrence is following developments at the Pentagon. He joins us live now with some new information on that operation. So, Chris, what are you learning?
Yeah, Rosemary, we're learning now from a U.S. official that in terms of finding out exactly that it was Osama bin Laden, we're told that the assault team that went into that compound said that they thought, just by visual recognition, that they thought the description matched Osama bin Laden, but they also did some facial recognition technology, among other things, to positively identify him as bin Laden. We're also hearing that emphatically that the body of Osama bin Laden will not be brought back to the United States. They say the disposition of the body will be done under Islamic law, but the exact details of that are still being worked out. We're also getting some new information about this whole idea and this real controversy that is starting to come out about the relationship of the Pakistani officials to this mission. As Nick Payton-Walsh was reporting, Pakistani officials there are saying they were on the ground as this was taking place. U.S. officials have been emphatically saying, no, that's not true, that they did not inform the Pakistani officials until after the raid took place. One official is now telling us that the Pakistanis may have been helpful and instrumental in terms of piecing the mission together, but that the Pakistanis did not know that the U.S. was directly targeting Osama bin Laden in that compound. Rosemary.
All right, Chris Lawrence with that new information. Appreciate that. Well, of course, as we heard, news of bin Laden's death spread rapidly around the world. We heard specifically from the Israeli Prime Minister. Let's go now to Phil Black, who's live in Jerusalem. So, Phil, explain to us, what is the feeling there now as this news spreads, as people sort of absorb this and try to digest what exactly this means globally and certainly in that part of the world?
Yeah, Rosemary, here in Israel, it is Holocaust Memorial Day, which is normally a somber, reflective day for people to think about and remember the millions of Jews who were killed in the Holocaust. Normally, television program, well, a lot of it is suspended entirely. Much of it is dedicated to the sort of somber, reflective programming on that very significant piece of Jewish history. Today it's a little bit different, though. We have television, radio programs dedicated to rolling coverage of the death of Osama bin Laden, what it may mean for this region. The Israeli Foreign Minister this morning has said that in many ways it is symbolic that this has taken place on Israel's Holocaust Memorial Day. And we've had that statement that John mentioned a few moments ago from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in which he spoke of Israelis joining in the joy of the American people on this historic day. And he also spoke of this being a resounding victory for all countries that fight side by side determinedly against terror. Israel is very much referring to itself in that statement. And Israel will tell you that operating in the Palestinian territories, Gaza specifically, it believes there are Al-Qaeda affiliated groups. The reality is they're generally quite small. Their influence is not great, and they are as much an irritant to Israel as they are to the governing authority in Gaza, Hamas, which is, although an enemy of Israel, also very much in a daily struggle, if you like, against these smaller extremist Salafist groups in Gaza itself. But Israel will be very much looking to see what reaction comes out of the Palestinian territories here today from groups that may claim direct linkage to Al-Qaeda, but also more broadly. You may remember that in the wake of September 11, there were images, video images of Palestinians celebrating the fall of the Twin Towers. And over the years, the Palestinian situation has been very much a rallying point for Islamist groups around the world, something that Al-Qaeda, Bin Laden himself, has spoken about in recordings over the last 10 years or so. So very much looking to see what the reaction will be from those Palestinian territories today, Rosemary.
Indeed. And Phil, how likely is it? Are we likely to see this as a unifying day or a divisive day, do you think, once everyone does start to absorb this news?
Well, difficult to say. Within the Palestinian territories itself, you're not going to see strong gestures of anger or sadness among the broader population, certainly. The territories are a very different place today than they were 10 years ago. We will be looking to see if some of the more extremist groups do perhaps react in a more violent, physical, angry way in itself. Certainly here in Israel, when you talk to people, there is very much a sense of satisfaction about this news. But interestingly, from many of the people that I've spoken to this morning already, the reaction from Israelis is, well, it's about time. This has taken far too long. And many people here have made the point that if this was a terror leader of this scale that had attacked Israel in the same sort of way, they believe it's something that this nation would have taken care of in a much shorter time frame, Rosemary.
And of course, it goes without question that here in the United States, wall-to-wall coverage, what is the situation there on the television? And of course, it's way too early for newspapers, but certainly radio and word of mouth.
Yeah, well, very much so. It is the #1 talking point in this country today, as I say, rolling coverage on radio, on television. And it is unusual given what is usually the nature of this day. Holocaust Memorial Day is a somber, reflective day for Jews to reflect upon that most significant of events in their history, the Holocaust itself. And normally, television programming is something that dies away entirely, to the point where, as I mentioned, a lot of programs cease broadcasting on this day in its entirety. But so far, this is what everyone is very much talking today, from people on the street to the government, across radio and television as well. People here are digesting the news that Osama Bin Laden has been killed. Rosemary.
They most certainly are. Phil Black reporting there from Jerusalem. Thanks so much, John.
It is still early in the morning here in the United States, but yet they are still outside the White House celebrating the news that Osama Bin Laden is dead. These are live pictures of the crowd which has gathered outside. They have been chanting USA. They've been singing the national anthem. All of this since word started to spread about 4 hours ago now, before the president made that official announcement that Osama bin Laden had in fact been killed. An hour after that, around 11:30 p.m. Eastern time, United States President Barack Obama made that statement. This jubilant crowd then cheering that news that the most wanted man in the world had in fact been killed by special operations forces inside Pakistan. There are still, though, so many unanswered questions about what comes next. And to try and answer some of those questions, Peter Bergen joins us now live to talk us through some of these issues. Peter, does anyone take over from Osama bin Laden? Is it possible that he'll have a successor?
Well, there will be a successor. The question is, how effective will that successor be? And in my view, and I've interviewed many people who know bin Laden, who've been part of his organization, no one can really replace him. You know, when you join Al-Qaeda, you don't swear an oath of allegiance to Al-Qaeda, you swear a personal oath of allegiance to bin Laden. And while comparisons with the Nazis is not something that I like to often to do, there is one comparison. When you joined the Nazi party, you didn't swear an oath of allegiance to Nazism, you swore an oath of allegiance to Adolf Hitler. And if Adolf Hitler had died in 1944 with the bomb that was placed under the conference room table by a group of army conspirators on July 20th, 1944, World War II would certainly have ended earlier, but since it was so much essentially Hitler that had decided to put that war in motion. Similarly with bin Laden founded Al-Qaeda. Bin Laden was the intellectual author of 9/11. And there is no one, he does have a deputy, Ayman al-Zawahiri, his #2, but he is not somebody who that on the scale of bin Laden. When people describe their relationship with bin Laden, people that I've interviewed or in court cases, when you look at these cases, they describe feelings of love. Love is a very strong verb. They don't describe feelings of love for Ayman al-Zawahiri or other people in the movement. So yes, there will be a successor, but the question is how useful will that successor be for the organization? And I think the successor will be nothing, fortunately, on the scale of what we've seen of Osama bin Laden, John.
It's important to remember that Al-Qaeda is still operational in more than 60 countries around the world. So given that, can we see a splintering of the group, freelancing, if you like, among Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula or Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan? Could we see a period of instability, if you like?
Well, as you know, John, I mean, there are plenty of Al-Qaeda affiliates. We were together in Pakistan, where there are groups that don't even call themselves Al-Qaeda, yet operate with an Al-Qaeda-like agenda. Take, for instance, the Pakistani Taliban. One of Osama bin Laden's great unfortunate gifts to humanity is that he was able to influence other groups. The Pakistani Taliban sent a suicide bomber to Times Square on May 1st, 2010. Luckily he didn't succeed. The Pakistani Taliban has sent suicide bombers to Barcelona. Luckily they didn't succeed. So it's not just the affiliates, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which almost succeeded in blowing up to Flight 253 over Detroit on Christmas Day 2009. It's also Al-Qaeda in Iraq. It's Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, which just looked like it killed something like a couple of dozen people in Morocco in the last few days. And you can go on, Al-Shabaab in Somalia. There are plenty of these regional affiliates. And unfortunately, bin Laden's sort of demonic gift to the world is that his ideology has been taken up by a sufficiently large number that it will continue without him. Killing a person is a lot easier than killing an idea. Bin Laden has been losing the war of ideas in the Muslim world. Support for him, for Al-Qaeda, for suicide bombing has been dropping precipitously. But that said, it doesn't require a very large group of people to continue inflicting the kinds of terrorist attacks that we've seen in Indonesia, in Jordan, in Iraq, in any Muslim country you care to mention, and of course in the West. And this is a great victory today, not only for the United States, but for all the victims of Al-Qaeda. We should remember that the largest terrorist attack in British history, the most deadly one on July 7th, 2005, was carried out by Al-Qaeda. We should remember that thousands of victims of Al-Qaeda died in Iraq as a result of the Al-Qaeda suicide bombers. We should remember the several dozen people who died at a wedding in Amman, Jordan in 2005 because of Al-Qaeda. And the list goes on and on, John.
I mean, if we look at the warnings that are coming out now from the State Department for U.S. citizens, in fact, the warnings that are now around the world, essentially for people to be careful at airports, be careful at hotels, because of this concern for some kind of retaliation. But is it possible for some kind of grand retaliation by Al-Qaeda? Because it seems that in recent years they've been getting away from these big gestures to small lone wolf kind of attacks.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have the capacity to do a 9/11 or anything close. That said, if Northwest Flight 253 had blown up over Detroit, that would have killed 300 mostly Americans on board. More people on the ground in Detroit would have had a transformational effect on global aviation, tourism, and international business, and probably would have been a crippling blow to the Obama presidency. Luckily, it didn't happen. But the point is that these groups do retain some residual capacity. They can get lucky, and certainly the death of bin Laden is something that a number of people around the world will try and take revenge, particularly in the country where he's just been killed, because the people motivated by these ideas regard the United States not only as an enemy, but the Pakistani government itself. We've seen literally thousands of Pakistani civilians being killed by groups motivated by Al-Qaeda's ideology in the past several years, and bin Laden and his number two, Ayman al-Zawahiri, have made it a point of Al-Qaeda policy to attack the Pakistani state and military in the last several years.
One last very quick question. Who knew in Pakistan, within the Pakistani government, that bin Laden was where he was?
I don't think we know the answer to that, John.
Okay. Peter, thank you very much. Peter Bergen, live for us this evening in Washington. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, we want to take a step back for just a moment with some background on Osama bin Laden's life before the 9/11 attacks on the United States back in 2001. And he was born in 1957 in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, the 17th of 52 children fathered by Mohammed bin Laden. Now, in 1979, bin Laden graduated with a degree in civil engineering from a Saudi university. After the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan that same year, he joined the Afghan resistance known as the Mujahideen. Now, for most of the 1980s, bin Laden supported and at times even fought alongside the Afghans. In 1988, he founded Al-Qaeda with the mission of providing men and money for the Mujahideen. Now, after the U.S. invasion of Kuwait back in 1990, bin Laden turned his attention to the United States for its presence on Saudi soil near the Muslim holy sites of Mecca and Medina. It began a series of terror attacks that would last for years. In 1993, he was assumed to have been behind the first attack on the World Trade Center in New York. In 1998, saw a pair of truck bombs at U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. And then in 2000, bin Laden is linked to the bombing of the USS Cole in Yemen. All of it leading up to the 9/11 attacks that destroyed the World Trade Center in New York and damaged the Pentagon near Washington. For more now on this historic event, nearly a decade after the terror attacks of 9/11, we are joined by CNN's Homeland Security correspondent Jean Meserve. And Jean, of course, this is just a huge day for the United States, but not only the US. Right across the globe, people are marking this day. Not everyone necessarily celebrating, but what are the consequences? What are the ramifications now of this in terms of these alerts that are now being issued across the globe for U.S. citizens and for others?
Of course, great concern about the possibility of some sort of retaliation from Al-Qaeda, from a sympathizer, from an affiliate. And so, as you mentioned, there has been this worldwide alert to exercise caution here in the United States. Officials are saying they are not aware of any specific threat information, but it is clear that in certain respects, security is being stepped up. We know that the New York City Police Commissioner Ray Kelly sent out an alert to all of his commands, urging them to be at increased vigilance. In addition, a New York City police official told me that you will see additional police presence in places like Times Square and other iconic sorts of places around New York, transportation hubs and the like. In addition, in Philadelphia, we know that the police chief has stepped up patrols around synagogues and around mosques. That's going to be done on an hourly basis, according to him. The Department of Homeland Security says it will continue to protect Americans with measures seen and unseen. They are not giving us any specifics, but I have talked to a former Department of Homeland Security official who says there was a game plan on the shelf that they were able to pull out that has to do with protection of transportation hubs, critical infrastructure, and the like. But this isn't just about protection. The other thing that's really ramping up here is intelligence gathering. Clearly, bin Laden has had 10 years to prepare for the possibility of his death. There's always been concern that he might be dispatching people to the U.S. They may already be here. They may be sleepers, and that perhaps his death would be a trigger to take some kind of an action. So we can anticipate that the intelligence community is looking very carefully at everybody who has been on their radar to see if they say any indications of any call to action. One of the worries is that some of these people may work as lone wolves as opposed to parts of cells, of course, being much easier to detect. Another big concern amongst some of the counterterrorism officials who I've spoken to is what happens next. You were just talking about this with Peter a few moments ago. There's a real sense that at least under Osama bin Laden, you sort of knew what you were dealing with. There was, oddly enough, a sort of stability in the situation. And the question now is, who does take over that organization? Does it become more radical? Does it become less stable? Those are all the sorts of questions being considered right now. But again, at this point in time, officials saying no specific threat information. They do say, however, that they are carefully monitoring all kinds of intelligence. It is possible that in the days and weeks ahead, of course, that situation will change significantly as people affiliated with Al-Qaeda or sympathizing with them may decide to take some kind of action in retaliation. Rosemary?
All right, Jean Meserve, many thanks. John.
Okay, let's stay in Washington right now. Joe Johns is live at the White House, where there is still a huge crowd gathered outside. Joe joins us now live with the mood there. Joe, is it just pure jubilation, or is there a moment to pause to remember what happened on 9/11?
Well, it's interesting. Here at the White House, a lot of jubilation, quite frankly, John Voss. You're right. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of people in front of the White House. A very young crowd, at least of the people I've seen. A lot of college students. Apparently, a lot of people just recently graduated from college. And you kind of wonder why. Many of them, it seems, came with just cameras, and a lot of people grabbed something that was red, white, and blue, the colors of the U.S. flag. And I talked to one person who said, this is the VJ Day of our generation. Now, to that end, I'd like to talk at this time to a veteran, actually, of Afghanistan and Iraq, Alicia Watkins, and September 11th. You heard about this. You were in Frederick, Maryland, which is about 60 miles outside of the city. You came down here, and I guess this takes you back to 9/11 when you were at the Pentagon. Talk to me about that.
Well, my life forever changed. I lost a lot of good people on that day, and my life forever changed. So when this happened, I, just hauled tail down here just to be a part of it. It feels such, and the brilliance and the feeling that I felt after all the turmoil on that day. I remember our flag being flown over the Pentagon. I remember so much, and I got that feeling back.
You also found yourself in Afghanistan and Iraq, and you were injured.
Yes.
And all of this, I suppose, comes flooding back tonight.
I know, and it almost feels like it was worth it. I've been through so much since September 11th, and to see all these people who I've never met before take pictures and slap my hand and everything else, it brings back that feeling that I felt when we draped that flag over that Pentagon that day. It really does.
Right, and you were talking to me earlier about how it seemed to you as if a cloud had been lifted off the White House.
It is. I'm from D.C. I've been in D.C. I've seen this White House so many times, and it looked so different. It looked so huge. It looked so powerful, so hopeful, and I don't know what it is. It looks different. It's a new White House. I really do feel that.
So tell me a little bit about your own story. You, as I said, were injured in Afghanistan. You've spent a long time recovering from essentially the effects of September 11, 2001.
And I didn't even know that it started September 11, and it's just been a buildup as I've gone to Iraq, as I've gone to Afghanistan, as I've lost so much. I feel like I can now start to rebuild. It's almost like, a parent who loses a child and the killer is brought to justice. I feel like this has been a cold case for a long time, and they've solved it, and I just feel so emotional. My heart is just so light right now. It really is.
All right, thank you so much, Alicia Watkins. So that's one story from in front of the White House, Lafayette Park, at this hour here in Washington, D.C., and I can tell you there's certainly thousands of others. John Voss, back to you.
Okay, Joe John's there for us live at the White House. That was amazing stuff. Thank you, Joe.
It certainly was. Okay, we do want to recap now for just a moment. In the past few hours, a major announcement from U.S. President Barack Obama.
Yes, Osama Bin Laden was killed by a small group of American forces inside Pakistan.
Today, at my direction, the United States launched a targeted operation against that compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. A small team of Americans carried out the operation with extraordinary courage and capability. No Americans were harmed. They took care to avoid civilian casualties. After a firefight, they killed Osama bin Laden and took custody of his body.
It's an announcement 10 years in the making. Bin Laden's been blamed for thousands of deaths in countless attacks around the world, most notably the attacks on New York and the Pentagon on September 11th, 2001. President Obama says the operation was carried out with Pakistan's cooperation.
All right, we do want to get reaction now from across the Middle East region, and Rima Bakhtabi is standing by for us at CNN Abu Dhabi. So, Rima, what are you seeing in terms of reaction to the death, the news that we've heard now of the death of Osama bin Laden?
Rosemary, it's a top headline news on all Arab media since early morning. It's important news for the region. Osama bin Laden is Saudi. He comes from this region, and he has a lot of supporters, but also he has a lot of people who hate him, and they denounce Al-Qaeda. First of all, we don't have at this point any official reaction from any Arab government at this stage. Everyone is waiting to see. They're assessing the situation. They may give official statements, they may not. Most importantly in this region is Saudi Arabia. As we know, Bin Laden is Saudi, and Saudi Arabia has been a victim of many explosions and attacks over the past years. So Bin Laden has been a threat to the Saudis and the rest of the Arab world in as much as he has been to America and the Western world. We are waiting for more reactions. We know for a fact some people will be very happy for the death of Bin Laden and for his killing, but other people will be sad. Rosemary?
Yes, certainly, and that's what we're seeing on social media. Certainly, I've been receiving a number of tweets from people saying, is this justice? And other comments certainly implying they are not celebrating on this day. Rima, I just want to make the point, of course, it is mourning there across the Middle East. So presumably there's just a delay in officials there and some governments perhaps pulling together statements, because this is a very delicate issue. The wording that they put in statements, they would need to be very careful what they say here.
Indeed, Rosemary, the words have to be chosen really well by Arab governments. On the one hand, they have been part of the battle against Al-Qaeda. We know there has been massive efforts by the UAE government and officials to curb Al-Qaeda's presence and influence in the region. We know that Saudis have started schools and programs to clear the minds of the young people in Saudi Arabia and the Muslim world from the Islamist extremist ideas. So there have been efforts. However, any celebration of the killing of Bin Laden, the head of Al-Qaeda, will be it will have any retaliation against governments, and this is what they're careful of. They're worried that there will be operations in the Arab world just as much as the US is. And even Arab networks, they're very careful about how they air the news, what analysts they host, and how they are tackling this topic. Rosemary.
All right, Rima Maktabi with the reaction there from across the region, reporting there from Abu Dhabi. Thanks so much. Well, of course, reaction has been pouring in from officials and lawmakers to the news, heralding justice for the victims of 9/11. And a little earlier, our Wolf Blitzer spoke with a New York City firefighter, one of the first responders to the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center. Take a listen.
As a New York City firefighter, first and foremost, I think I speak for all New York City firefighters when I give a heartfelt thanks to the members of the United States military who took on this very, very dangerous task. I think the most important news we've heard tonight, much more important than even the death of Osama Bin Laden, is the fact that we lost no troops, no American soldiers in this very, very, very dangerous situation that they put themselves in harm's way to go and do the business of this country. I think that we're a blessed country tonight, Wolf. As a New York City firefighter who survived both September 11th and illness diagnosed for my time at September 11th, I'm proud to be an American tonight. I'm proud of our men and women in the service. I'm proud of the special operations, and I know that I speak for every member of the New York City Fire Department when I say that I hope to God he rots in hell.
New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg says he hopes Bin Laden's death brings some closure and comfort to all those who lost loved ones on September 11, 2001. Indeed, celebrations have broken out at Ground Zero, and CNN's Jason Carroll is there. And Jason, if you can describe the mood for us. I asked Joe Johns this question. There's celebration, but is there a moment of reflection as well?
Well, the way to describe it down here, John, it's jubilant. I mean, the people have been coming down with each passing hour. More and more folks coming down here. They've been bringing their flags. They've been singing songs, reciting, you know, the Pledge of Allegiance, singing. It's really been incredible to see what's been happening down here. It sort of makes you wonder what's going to happen as each hour continues to pass, and when the morning comes and more folks are going to start to wake up and realize what's happening down here. I want to bring in someone very important to talk about the significance of this day. This is Lieutenant Dan Choi. He is a veteran of the war in Iraq, and you remember what happened during the 9/11. You were at West Point at that time. Tell me exactly what this night means for you.
Well, tonight means that we're all American. Whether we are Christian Americans or Muslim Americans, gay Americans or straight Americans, we're all Americans, and that's what we're celebrating here tonight. I don't think we have anything else that we need to celebrate than that.
You know, as I've been down here for the past few hours, I think a lot of people have said to me, you know, this is a night, this is a day that we thought would never come, or we were wondering when it would come. Does it finally seem real to you?
Well, there's been a lot of things in my journey that I've wondered when that victory or when that vindication would come. For me, I had sometimes lost hope in my personal journey, but I know that so long as we tell ourselves from the very first moments of stepping up to serve our country that we will never give up until we accomplish what it is we set out to achieve, then we're going to be all right.
Well, I think a lot of people, I speak for a lot of people who thank you for your service to the country and for what you've done for the United States. And I think a lot of people are now finally feeling a sense of closure. Are you feeling that as well?
I am, and I would like to say that there are many times in our journey where we didn't think that there would be a victory that could pass over all of and calm all of our nerves. But what we learned throughout this past decade is that the only antidote to victimization is confrontation, a confrontation of our own fears, of our own inadequacies, that knows no compromise when our values are at stake. And the values of integrity, courage, and serving one another will lead us forward after this.
Lieutenant Dan Choi, I want to thank you very much for coming down here and being with us this evening. And it's not just folks like Lieutenant Dan Choi who've come down here. Also want to introduce this gentleman as well, Calvin Roy. He's from Texas.
That's right.
And you're living here now.
I live here now in Texas.
Came down.
I came down. I was watching CNN. Wolf was talking about. Well,
we are glad that you were watching CNN.
I like CNN. It's a good news organization. But I remember where I was at when the towers came down because my TV was set as my alarm. And then about 20 minutes later, they said that we was under attack. And now, you know, we felt like we was together like a family. 10 years later, things have changed. And now I remember where I was at when the newscast came on that they had caught him and they killed him. And I feel again, you know, we're one family, we're one people, we're all Americans, just like Lieutenant Choi said.
Because I think people who are watching right now, you know, it's hard for them to sort of to get a sense of what it feels like to be down here. It does feel like you're taking part.
It's closure. It's closure. It's a chapter in our American history that's over. And what we need to send the Congress, the Senate, the House, and the President that it's over now. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, we can bring the troops home because we've won.
Calvin
it's
Roy.
Over.
Calvin
yes,
Roy from Texas. Want to thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
And very quickly, before we go, John and Rosemary, also want to bring in Steve Feldheim. Now, you came down here, you volunteered, you helped clean this area up when, you know, it was all hands on deck to get as many people down here to help. What is this like for you now to come back 10 years later to have a night like tonight?
I feel it's a little bit of a closure for the families and my friends that I've lost down here, for their families. They can try to maybe pick up and move on now. They'll never bring up anybody back, but this will be some sort of closure for them. And just the fact that all these people coming together and just reuniting, and it's kind of reminiscent of what it's like right after 9/11 when the whole city came together. This is what the country needs now, some healing, and this is hopefully everybody coming together will help spread the word that we are united, we are a great country, and this is what freedom does.
All right, Steve Feldheim, I want to thank you again for your efforts during that time, during 9/11. And again, John, Rosemary, I think that's what's really happening. More and more people are turning on their TV sets and they're hearing what's happening down here. They're coming down here to sort of take part in this celebration. And really that's what you have to call it. People have got their flags, little mini flags, bring them down here, and singing and just sort of taking part in history. John, Rosemary?
Jason, just very quickly, compare this to the anniversaries that you have seen at Ground Zero over the years, because it just seems to me that the mood and everything has just done a complete 180-degree turn, that this is now a different place.
It really is. And it's incredible because I think as I was walking down here, I heard one woman say, I never thought I would be taking part in a celebration at Ground Zero. And that is exactly what's happening down here now. You know, we've seen the neighborhood change. For those who have been in New York for a period of time now, some of us thought, you know, maybe this area would never come back. And slowly but surely over the years, we've seen it come back. And now to have people come down here and take part in his celebration, it's really quite moving. It's moving, and it's something that's special to be a part of.
Yeah, Jason, you were there for 9/11. I was there a few hours after you. It really is an incredible day. Thank you. Jason Carroll, live for us in New York.
It most certainly is. And of course, world reaction to the news of bin Laden's death came quickly on social media. Pauline Chu is watching the online buzz from CNN Hong Kong. And in fact, Pauline, there was some very early chatter on Twitter, wasn't there?
Very early, Rosemary. The buzz about bin Laden actually began well before official word arrived. And this was one of the first tweets breaking the news about half an hour ahead of President Obama's speech. Now, this tweet came from the Chief of Staff to former U.S. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld. He posted, "So I'm told by a reputable person they have killed Osama bin Laden." Then take a look at how the White House brought together social media with the president's historic address on their Facebook page. Live video of the speech appeared alongside a stream of status updates from users commenting on bin Laden's death. And when big news breaks, of course, we often see Twitter just light up with photos as people on the scene post what they're seeing at the moment. And since most people experienced this event at home in front of their televisions, they're posting photos of that moment. Take a look. This one is from singer will.i.am of the Black Eyed Peas. He tweeted a photo of people watching CNN on a small monitor in South Korea. And you see more from others around the world as people tried to capture this moment when they heard the news. While some posted photos, others posted their reaction. For example, boxer Oscar de la Hoya tweeted, "May 1st, Hitler died in 1945. May 1st, Osama died in 2011. And from actor Neil Patrick Harris, he tweeted, "Everyone is sitting around my living room, mouths agape. Wow, what a night. Thank you, Mr. President, for such an eloquent speech." And we're seeing some people suggesting it may be time to reconsider some post-9/11 security measures. John Dresner tweeted, "If Osama bin Laden is dead, can we please have our rights back?" So, Rosemary, the tweets are moving at a pretty rapid clip right now, and we'll have much more for you in the next hour.
They most certainly are. Pauline Chu, thanks for keeping an eye on that. And I just want to let everybody know that the Afghan president is actually speaking at this time, Hamid Karzai. Now, we will get a translation of this, of course, and bring you the details as they come into us, but we're keeping a very close eye on that. Of course, his reaction to the news today that Osama bin Laden is dead.
Yes, they've had a very tense relationship between Mr. Karzai and Mr. Obama. Maybe it'll get a little bit better after the events today.
Indeed, we shall see what he has to say. Well, let's talk more about this successful operation in Pakistan now.
We're joined now by a retired Brigadier General Mark Kimmett, a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Political and Military Affairs. General Kimmett, thanks for being with us live in our Washington Bureau at this late hour. We appreciate it. If you can just walk through how this operation played out. It started with intelligence back in August, and then it's gone through a series of months. Finally, the president authorized action, and then they got bin Laden. That seems like an awfully long time frame.
Well, it's really not. If you take a look at the intelligence cycle, going from information to intelligence to targetable intelligence to actionable intelligence, it takes a long time to develop that intelligence to where you can actually target and act upon it. So I'm not surprised it took that long, and I think the success of the mission indicates it probably was time well spent in developing the target set.
And talking of time, what is extraordinary is the whole operation apparently took 40 minutes. Run us through what would have happened, you know, from this helicopter raid to the point at which the bullet went through the head of Osama bin Laden, as we're hearing.
Well, it's not always helpful to talk about tactics, techniques, and procedures, but as you can imagine, they probably isolated the compound with a force both outside, and then you brought in some very specialized forces, either Navy SEALs or Joint Special Operations Forces, to actually do what is in the vernacular called door kicking. Went in very quickly, subdued the target, got the target set out of there, and they got out of there as quickly as possible before any potential reinforcements or other assistance could be brought in to fight the Americans. The fact that there were no casualties, the fact that there were no injuries at all among the Americans, as I understand, is testimony to how well trained and frankly, how well experienced these forces are.
And when we look at the intelligence and all the information which is slowly coming out about this compound where bin Laden was living, it was a massive compound built maybe 5 years ago, huge tall fences, and bin Laden had been there with his youngest wife maybe since late last year. Could there be any doubt that someone within the Pakistani government or within the Pakistani intelligence knew that bin Laden was there?
Well, I certainly don't know that to be the case. It would be hard to believe that a person of such significance, such as Osama bin Laden, who also travels with a fairly large entourage, that they could be inside that compound without some local knowledge, local official knowledge. But I don't know that to be the case. But it would be hard to believe that that wouldn't be the case.
And what do you make of the fact that he was actually, that they got him in a mansion as opposed to in a cave in the frontier area?
Well, I think it goes back to your earlier comment about whether he was getting external support or not. All indications, the fact that he was not living in a cave would mean that he was not operating independently, but that he was getting assistance and aid and comfort from others either in that area or from abroad.
And so a lot of people celebrating, certainly in the United States and across the globe, not everywhere, of course. But is this the beginning? Is this the end? I mean, really, can people be celebrating at this point? Because this isn't the end of what Al-Qaeda promises for the future, is it?
No, it certainly doesn't. And in fact, in many ways, we felt very much the same way when Saddam was captured. We recognized that that was an important day. We recognized it was cause for some measure of celebration. It was cause to be proud of those soldiers that put their lives on the line to accomplish this mission. But we also understood the day after Saddam was captured that there would be a next day and a day after that and a day after that. So congratulations to those that planned and executed this mission. I think, as many have said, there is a reason to have a sense of closure, but there's still a lot of work to be done. This is an organization that has affiliates around the world, and until those affiliates are destroyed, I don't think we can rest soundly.
Okay, General Mark Kimmett, live for us in Washington. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, it is just 5 minutes away from 3 o'clock in the morning here in the United States. So let's check those crowds. Even at that early hour, they are still gathering, celebrating outside the White House there and at Ground Zero, if we can bring that shot up as well. So people across the United States very happy to hear this news. They heard it some hours ago, about 5 hours ago now, but people slowly started to gather at the White House, and now the crowds are there. It's going to be interesting to see what happens the next morning.
What I think is truly extraordinary, when I cast my mind back to all of those anniversaries that we have seen we just saw someone being thrown in the air then. All of those anniversaries, those somber memorials that have taken place at Ground Zero, and all the controversy over this site in the rebuilding, and all the heartbreak and all the anguish over the last almost 10 years now, to see these scenes of jubilation, it really is something historic and something special to be watching here live on CNN.
That is right. As it starts a new day this Monday, the start of a new week in the United States, it's going to be interesting to see how those people go starting their working day. All right, well, just moving on now, some more details about the US-led operation in the Pakistani city of Abbottabad. CNN's Gloria Borgia tells us about the compound where the world's most wanted terrorist was hiding. Take a listen.
This compound in Abbottabad was apparently built in 2005. The physical security of it was extraordinary. It has 12 to 18-foot walls with barbed wire around it. Access had been restricted by 2 security gates. One official said that they had been paying attention to the couriers going in and out of this building. One of the couriers apparently attracted their attention. Another thing was that residents burned their trash as opposed to neighbors who just put their trash out for collection. One would think that that might raise a few eyebrows. So, and the property is apparently valued at $1 million, but it had no internet or telephone service. So, so this was something that they were clearly looking at, and that this operation had been monitoring for quite some time before the president gave the go-ahead on this on Friday. So and that more people were living at the compound than the two brothers and the families who were presumed to be living there. And there was one whose size and makeup matches Osama bin Laden.
And we're going to take a quick break now. We'll have more of our breaking news coverage after this.
Yeah, stay with us. You're watching CNN.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda.
Hello from CNN Center, I'm Rosemary Church.
And I'm John Vos, and you're watching our special coverage of the death of Osama bin Laden.
Well, U.S. President Barack Obama says justice has been done. Osama bin Laden, the man widely seen as the embodiment of terror, has been killed.
It was a message greeted by jubilant crowds in Washington and New York for reasons that Mr. Obama clearly understood.
It was nearly 10 years ago that a bright September day was darkened by the worst attack on the American people in our history. The images of 9/11 are seared into our national memory. Hijacked planes cutting through a cloudless September sky, the Twin Towers collapsing to the ground, black smoke billowing up from the Pentagon, the wreckage of Flight 93 in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where the actions of heroic citizens saved even more heartbreak and destruction. And yet we know that the worst images are those that were unseen to the world. The empty seat at the dinner table, children who were forced to grow up without their mother or their father, parents who would never know the feeling of their child's embrace, nearly 3,000 citizens taken from us, leaving a gaping hole in our hearts. On September 11th, 2001, in our time of grief, the American people came together. We offered our neighbors a hand, and we offered the wounded our blood. We reaffirmed our ties to each other and our love of community and country. On that day, no matter where we came from, what God we prayed to, or what race or ethnicity we were united as one American family.
There have been conflicting reports regarding Pakistan's involvement in the operation that helped U.S. forces locate bin Laden. For more on that and other details of the operation, we turn to CNN's Nick Payton-Walsh, who is live once again in Kabul, Afghanistan. So, Nick, what's the deal? Were the Pakistanis involved or not?
They say they were. Very early on, they came forward and said, yes, our intelligence operatives were on the ground during this, and we had prior knowledge to it. That conflicts greatly with what we're hearing from American officials across the Atlantic in Washington. So clearly, two different viewpoints here. Obviously, the Pakistanis would want to show they're out in front of this, preempt criticism as to why on earth was bin Laden able to hide here for a number of months? That will be the question reverberating, I'm sure, for the next couple of days. In terms of the actual operation itself, we are hearing of a helicopter which dropped special forces into this compound, high walls, heavily fortified, perhaps worth up to $1 million where bin Laden had been hiding out. Key to this, though, it appears that communications in and out of this compound, there were none. There were no mobile phones, no internet, apparently, and as I've heard also, couriers coming to and from it were also under observation. So questions will be asked as to how he was able to be there for so long, but I think it's possible to perhaps explain that this was a relatively discreet, covert compound, plus also in a very big city. Lots of people around, so the potential for him to disguise himself in that area is significantly greater, John.
And Nick, a short time ago, we saw on Afghan television that the president of Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai, was talking. He was holding a news conference. Do we know any details of what he said?
I can only paraphrase him at this point, but he was basically saying, I hope the world will now believe that Afghanistan is not the place where terrorists are and that they should not be hunted down in the homes of women and children here, effectively alluding to the NATO campaign, its toll on civilians, and I think really trying to seize on this as a potential PR opportunity, really saying, look, we've all along said that Al-Qaeda and the insurgents you're hunting are across the border in Pakistan, and perhaps I think trying to a degree of national, not pride, but at least reminding Afghans that this at least shows they have not been the ones who have been hiding bin Laden.
There's also some talk now that Analysts suggesting that the U.S. could start drawing down troops a little sooner rather than later. The original plan was 2014. Any talk of that and what the reactional implications of that might be?
I think the death of bin Laden provides a very easy political narrative for the Obama administration. They can say, look, the guy's dead. He's the reason we went there, and we can start to move away from here. But there's a much more complicated situation on the ground. Only recently people have begun to talk about the presence of Al-Qaeda re-emerging in some of the havens where U.S. forces have withdrawn from on the Pakistani border. So concerns about that. But I think also really this is about trying to ensure that America leaves behind a functioning state. The reason why they came here in the first place was the Taliban had used the dilapidated, kind of collapsed nature of Afghanistan as a place in which they could allow Al-Qaeda a safe haven. So I think there'll be two arguments. One, perhaps on the Democratic U.S. side, suggesting, yes, it is time to leave, and perhaps another argument saying, you know, the fact that this man is dead does not operationally change the situation on the ground, and perhaps we might even see what remains of Al-Qaeda trying to retaliate, trying to raise its operation.
Nick Payton-Walsh live for us in Kabul. Rosemary?
Well, New Yorkers have awaited this day for nearly 10 years. The sight of the fallen World Trade Center towers generally evokes a somber mood, of course, but celebrations have broken out at Ground Zero, and CNN's Jason Carroll is there taking it all in and talking to many people on the ground there. And it is an extraordinary day for those people who really saw, for them, 9/11. It was a horrendous day for them at the ground there, but also for the rest of the world as it watched on. But what are people saying to you now?
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to say, you know, when you come down here, Rosemary, I mean, you really get the sense of the celebration. You see the people with their flags, you hear the people singing, you hear the people chanting. But it's also a moment of reflection for a lot of people who are coming down here. I want to introduce you to one, Diane Massaroli. You can see right now she's holding the picture of her husband. Her husband, Michael, was killed on 9/11. This must be an incredibly conflicting day for you in terms of what you're feeling, in terms of being down here.
No, definitely. It's definitely bittersweet. When I first heard, my son had woken me up and he said, Mommy, I think you want to put the TV on and you're going to want to see what's on. And I started crying right away, but I feel a sense of relief, a peacefulness also.
Is it really a sense of relief? Because I think of, you know, a lot of people who lost loved ones on that day might have conflicting feelings on a day like today when you see all the folks who are down here celebrating for obvious reasons. But is that the emotion you're feeling most?
I feel a bunch of different. Of course, I'm sad. I'm missing him all the time, but I feel that justice is done, and that's a great feeling for me. And I do feel some overall calm that I haven't felt in almost 10 years.
Your husband, Michael, worked at Cantor Fitzgerald. He was on the 101st floor when it happened. 10 years, did you ever think this day would actually come?
Never. I was shocked. Never thought it would happen. And I never thought it would give me a feeling of closure. I didn't believe that there could be closure because my husband's remains were never found. So I didn't think that this would ever give me closure, but in a way it does. I feel better. I feel like I could, you know, put a new foot forward and maybe start a new chapter in my life.
Well, I think a lot of people are probably watching and are standing right behind you. So I thank you for coming down and taking the time to speak with us. I also want to take an opportunity. Diane also knows Mario Costiola. You guys are friends. You're an Army vet.
Yes.
And tell me what this day means for you as you come down here. You see all the folks who are out here who are celebrating.
It has a lot of personal meaning to me. I served here on Ground Zero in the aftermath of 9/11. Later served in Iraq, and for me this is also a kind of a bit of a closure. I remember President Bush vowing, I watched it right down the block here on TV when he vowed that we'd bring our enemies to justice, or justice to our enemies, and that's the first thing I thought of tonight when I heard the news.
All right, Mario Costiola and Diane Massaroli, I want to thank both of you for taking the time to come down here, share your feelings, not just with us, but with so many people who are out there watching and taking place and taking part in what is history down here at Ground Zero, as so many people come down here, Rosemary and John, to celebrate, to reflect, as these two are doing. And for some, this is not just a time for celebration, but it's also a time they can finally bring some closure to a very painful chapter in their lives. Back to you.
That's right. Jason Carroll there at Ground Zero, and that's the word we're hearing all of the time here is closure. Thanks so much, John.
Rose, we want to get some more now on what will happen with Osama Bin Laden's body. The U.S. officials have said that it will be handled in the Islamic tradition. CNN's Jean Meserve has more on that right now. Jean, I believe you have some more details about what they plan to do with his body.
John, according to a U.S. official spoken to by our national security producer, Pam Benson, this U.S. official says that the body has already been buried at sea and that the body has been handled in the traditional Islamic tradition. The official would not elaborate beyond that. So the headline here, the body has already been disposed of. It's been disposed of at sea. No details on how and why that was done. One could speculate that one reason might have been that anybody who wanted to be able to find that body would not be able to do so with a burial at sea. John, back to you.
Won't this actually lead to some problems of conspiracy theorists, of people wanting to see the body now? You know, the first thing that occurs to me is that people are going to say that this is all part of the U.S. conspiracy, that he really is still alive.
I would have to imagine, John, that they have recorded this in some fashion, that there is some sort of documentary record of the body. Will that satisfy people who harbor those kinds of theories? It may not. It actually may not. But this is the course the U.S. government apparently is taking.
Because when Uday and Qusay was killed, the bodies were displayed. So there's been a deliberate change of tactics, or if you like, in this case.
Apparently so. I wish we had more detail to bring you, John, but that's the very bare facts that they're giving us at this point in time.
It is a truly surprising turn of events. Jean Meserve, thank you so much.
You bet.
It most certainly is. And joining me now on the phone is someone we all remember from the successful overthrow of the Taliban in Kabul back in 2001. He is Dr. Abdullah Abdullah, one of the anti-Taliban commanders who years later was also a candidate for president of Afghanistan. We are not disclosing Dr. Abdullah's current location at this time for obvious reasons. But, Doctor, I wonder if I could just get you to respond to that news that we just heard from Jean Meserve. Quite shocking, in fact. Of course, the world just absorbing this information that Osama Bin Laden has been killed, that he is dead. But now we're hearing his body has already been buried at sea. What's your response to that?
My response would rather be on the occasion of him being killed. What happened to the body will matter less, though it might lead, as it was mentioned earlier, to some conspiracy theories which have been around all along, that you're aware of it. But the impact of what has happened will be far-reaching beyond what already has been mentioned in regards to Afghanistan, in regards to the region, in regards to the war against terrorism throughout the world.
But do you think that this could raise problems as far as the U.S. sort of telling the world that indeed Osama bin Laden is dead? But a lot of people saying we want proof of that. We want to be sure that that is most certainly the case. All right, clearly we have lost our connection there with Dr. Abdullah. Abdullah, we will try to reconnect with him. John.
But those crowds still remain outside the White House in Washington, D.C. There was an unexpected surge of revelers there on news that Osama bin Laden had been killed. Correspondent Joe Johns is there. He joins us once again live. And, Joe, it's getting quite late there, but the crowd's not going anywhere.
For sure. Well, diminishing just a bit, perhaps, but not in spirit, I can tell you that, John. And who knows what it'll be like through the evening. It's strange how spontaneous crowds rise and fall through the night. I wouldn't want to predict. However, I wanted to just give you some sense of what we're looking at here right now. What we've seen is a lot of military personnel, a lot of college kids, a number of veterans. And, you know, in our last live shot, we spoke to a woman who was a veteran of Afghanistan, as well as someone who had been at the Pentagon on 9/11. Many of these people who came here came with American flags, red, white, and blue. You can see a lot of that. A lot of excitement, a lot of college students as well. So maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Anyway, you have a general idea. People are very happy, and I think probably I'll throw it back to you.
Joe Johns, the rock star there outside the White House. They saw the camera. They came running. Don't know if Joe can still hear us. Probably can't. Let's just... How are we going for battery power? We can still look at this site? Okay, it's 3:15 in the morning, and they still have energy, which is amazing to see. Is Joe still there? Joe? No, we've lost Joe. One interesting thing about a lot of people are now saying, and you can see by the crowds outside the White House, a lot of people are now saying that President Obama has sealed his re-election in 2012 with this announcement a few hours ago.
This is the most important announcement he has made in his first term. Absolutely. And if he has a second term, still the most important announcement.
This has been the focus of U.S. foreign policy ever since 9/11. George W. Bush couldn't make this announcement. Barack Obama did. Candidate Obama said repeatedly, if I am president, we will kill bin Laden.
And he has done that. All right, well, more now about this successful operation in Pakistan. I'm joined once again by retired U.S. Brigadier General Mark Kimmett, a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs. Thank you, sir, for talking with us again and staying up at this very late hour. I do want to just talk to you very quickly about this news that we got from Gene Reserve just a very short time ago, that, of course, as the world celebrates, most of the world celebrates the death of Osama Bin Laden, we now hear that his body has already been buried at sea. What's your reaction to that, and what do you think are the likely ramifications of that?
Well, I'm sure the conspiracy theorists will have a field day with this about why it was done, was it done, is he still alive? Quite frankly, Bin Laden was famous for putting out videos. If Bin Laden is still alive, I'm sure we're going to see a video of him quite soon.
Well, that's a very good point indeed. Let's go back to this operation, because I think a lot of people are quite amazed. It's been nearly 10 years, and people have been looking, the US and others have been looking for Osama bin Laden. Suddenly, of course, we hear that on Friday, the US president gave the word to go ahead to seek out and kill Osama bin Laden. Walk us through what likely happened.
Well, first of all, I don't think that this just happened on Friday. More than likely, this had been an intelligence operation that had been developed for months and months and months. The information became intelligence, the intelligence became targetable intelligence, and then further refined became actionable intelligence. And once the intelligence got to the point where the commanders who were going to be putting soldiers at risk said, I think we've got enough to work on, then they, in consultation with their chain of command, got permission from the president and executed the mission.
Why do you think that Osama bin Laden was able to hide near the Pakistan capital for what appeared to be a fairly long time?
Well, that's going to be the major question that's asked in the days and weeks to come. Was the Pakistani government complicit? Were some local officials complicit? Were external organizations outside of Pakistan complicit? I think we're just going to have to wait and see the answer to that. But it would seem very, very hard to believe that somebody could be in that area for an extended period of time without some local official being aware of it. So, but again, I'm only speculating, and time will tell.
Well, I'm not sure whether you were able to hear what the Afghanistan president, Hamid Karzai, had to say, but of course he's celebrating in his own way because, of course, the capture and the consequent killing occurred on Pakistani soil.
Well, it certainly would have been an embarrassment for the Afghani president if, in fact, it turns out that all this time period he had been inside of Afghanistan. And in some cases, it would be an embarrassment for our own intelligence services because we are so heavily, our presence is so heavy inside of Afghanistan. But the fact is, he was in Pakistan. And if the Afghani president wants to now make an issue between himself and Pakistan over this, that's probably not a wise choice or a wise move to make.
Now, for a lot of people, certainly in the United States, they're experiencing a sense of closure at this time, but this isn't the end, is it? How much should the American public and others across the globe be on alert here?
Well, in the near term, I think there's every reason to be on higher state of alert than we've been in some time. Clearly, the Al-Qaeda organization, which has now lost their spiritual and ideological leader, has got to demonstrate to the world that it's still a viable organization. The only way they can do that is by prosecuting some operations to demonstrate that they are still alive and still dangerous. So there's every reason in the world to increase the threat warnings at this point.
Yeah, and that, of course, is the concern. But they would have been preparing for this day, presumably. What sort of impact do you think this has had on the Al-Qaeda leadership? Because presumably they're prepared for this.
Well, they are, but for years, Bin Laden has not had an operational role from all reports that I've read. He's been more of an ideological figure, a leadership figure, a iconic figure, so to speak, but not really one who's planning day-to-day operations. Every year or so, he may put out some commander's intent to sort of keep the organization moving in a certain direction, but by and large, the hard work is being done by the affiliates in the specific countries, in Yemen, in the Maghreb, as we saw with Zarqawi inside of Iraq. So it will have a iconic importance, his loss, but in terms of the day-to-day operations of Al-Qaeda, I wouldn't expect to see a significant change in the near term.
All right, U.S. retired Brigadier General Mark Emmett, thanks for staying up. It's 3:21 in the morning here in the United States, and you were good to stay with us. Appreciate it.
Glad to do so.
Rosemary, the buzz about Bin Laden's death spread quickly online. Anna Corrin joins us now from CNN Hong Kong with more. In fact, it wasn't just the buzz that spread, it was Twitter which pretty much broke the news.
That's exactly right, John. We are seeing widespread reaction from former leaders to ordinary people. Well, this is the Facebook page of former US President George W. Bush. Well, he issued a statement after hearing of Bin Laden's death from President Obama. Well, Mr. Bush says, "This momentous achievement marks a victory for America, for people who seek peace around the world, and for all those who lost loved ones on September 11, 2001. The fight against terror goes on, but tonight, America has sent an unmistakable message. No matter how long it takes, justice will be done." Well, news that Osama bin Laden had been killed began to leak out on Twitter. Most point to this tweet as the first real report of his death. Keith Urban, the chief of staff for former US Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld, said, "So I'm told by a reputable person they have killed Osama bin Laden." Well, that news spread very quickly. Less than an hour after Urban's tweet, almost 18% of all tweets had the word Osama in them. Well, by the time President Obama's speech finished, there were over 4,000 tweets a second talking about the story. A significant jump in traffic, but short of the record 7,000 tweets a second set during New Year's Eve. But Keith Urban might not have been the first person to break the story. It looks like this IT consultant in Attabad might have been live tweeting the raid on bin Laden's compound as it was happening. Well, he talks about a helicopter hovering over the city at 1 a.m., something he says is very rare. And later, he mentions a loud blast, which he then says might have been a helicopter going down. We've reached out to him, but have yet to hear back. We have no real way of verifying whether he really heard the American helicopters or not, but it's worth noting that he was in the city when it happened and was posting his tweets hours before we heard that Obama was set to make that statement. Well, let's step back for a moment and look at some of the key events in bin Laden's past. Well, he founded Al-Qaeda in 1988, but the group did not become a terror network until 1991. Well, the next year, that being 1992, bin Laden allegedly sent some of his followers to Somalia to fight US troops there. Well, in late February 1993, a bomb exploded at New York's World Trade Center. Bin Laden is named as a co-conspirator, but not indicted. In 1996, bin Laden declares a holy war against US forces.